He grips the hilt of his sword tightly, expressing pain and tension in the fiery light around him. He screams with rage and intensity, steam coming out of his mouth and sparks flying around. A level 67 Sebarumus dragon appears against the backdrop of the fire, accompanied by the cry of, "Wingless Dragon Sebarumus!" 3 warriors, including Chulsu, rush across a blazing battlefield, preparing for battle. A huge creature with an open mouth releases a powerful fireball, surrounded by bright flashes and energy. Against the backdrop of fire, a woman in a hat with a staff screams, and an old man in a helmet looks ahead tensely, preparing for battle. The old man in the helmet looks forward with surprise and anxiety, tensely clutching his shield. Against a backdrop of fire and smoke, a green-skinned man in torn clothing takes a sharp step forward. The image shows a huge red dragon releasing a powerful beam of light from its mouth. A small creature with a club stands tensely in front of huge red paws, preparing for a fight in a fiery environment. The image shows a creature with a long nose making a high-pitched cry while clutching a red object. A bright explosion of light and fire illuminates the scene, creating a sense of powerful energy or attack, but the characters in the image are not visible. A creature with horns is depicted against the backdrop of a bright explosion, emitting a loud cry. An unknown creature with a long nose and horns makes a loud cry against the backdrop of fire and bright flashes. The image shows a creature with long limbs attacking with a powerful energy strike, creating bright light and dynamic movement. He screams in rage, while the 2 behind him express shock and anger as they watch what is happening. The huge creature burns in flames, and someone is surprised that Sebarumus was defeated in one blow. An old man in armor points his finger with fear and anxiety, expressing urgency and fear. Chulsu stands by the fire, watching as Ji-yoon and Catherine with 2 other characters watch him from a distance. Chulsu, carrying a heavy bag with tension and sweat on his face, shouts something at the construction site. He thinks he's weak and should be in a low-level dungeon while drinking water from a bottle. Chulsu sits, thoughtfully speaking about the essence of retribution, expressing doubt and fatigue. Chulsu watches as 2 men around a fire in a barrel complain about the cold. One of them says it's very cold today. A warrior in armor stands before a huge purple serpent with green eyes, feeling the experience so real it is almost tangible. Chulsu lies in a capsule with virtual reality goggles on his head. The idea is voiced that thanks to numerous internet cafes around the country, even the poor can easily follow fashion trends. A hand clutches a bag of money, accompanying the thought that real money has begun to flow into the game. The image shows a stack of dollars floating in the air against a backdrop of sky and blurred buildings. An open palm is shown against the backdrop of a city, accompanied by text stating that in-game items have become real currency. Chulsu, wearing a tank top, looks down with a slight smile, giving off an air of focus and inner confidence. Chulsu struggles to break free, clenching his teeth and raising his arms above his head. Chulsu slams his pickaxe into the ground, activating the skill Strike Rock. Chulsu screams while clutching his head, expressing intense despair and pain. Chulsu screams and cries, letting tears flow from his eyes, expressing strong emotions. He holds a glowing green crystal in his gloves in surprise and thinks that if he exchanges it, then Chulsu licks the glowing green crystal greedily, clutching it tightly in his hands. Catherine watches as a man with black hair and a predatory gaze licks a shiny green crystal in surprise. Chulsu notices a woman in a red dress with admiration, while 2 men behind her watch her with different reactions. The image shows tall rock formations with bright blue crystals glowing in a misty and mysterious atmosphere. Catherine thoughtfully tells Chulsu that she could help while he listens to her with concern. 2 men are talking. One with horns on his helmet is saying something important to the other one with black hair. He thinks that if he joins their group, he will be able to share experience and get valuable ores, considering it a profitable offer. Catherine grabbed Chulsu's wrist tightly, showing determination and control over the situation. Chulsu is surprised when Catherine tenderly kisses his gloved hand, causing him to feel embarrassed and flustered. Chulsu, trembling and with sweat on his face, holds the wooden object and is internally surprised by his own words. The image shows a level 7 wolf, and the text says the monsters are lower than expected. Chulsu realizes that his level is still lower while surrounded by wolves and prepares for battle. Chulsu shields himself with his hand as he is viciously attacked by a huge beast with red eyes and sharp fangs. Chulsu uses the skill Salamander Flame, dealing a powerful fire attack with high numerical damage. Catherine, surrounded by fire, asks if there is a place to take cover. Chulsu is amazed by Catherine's power, which wipes out an entire pack of gray wolves with one shot. Catherine asks for something with a pleading voice, touching her face. Chulsu sweats intensely and wonders if it's finally happening. A man confidently dodges attacks from two wolves that miss him. Chulsu grips his sword tightly against a blazing fire as he prepares to fight. In the image, Chulsu delivers a powerful chain attack to multiple enemies, dealing 1,800, 1,836, and 1,798 damage to them. He stands confidently with his weapon on his shoulder against the backdrop of fire, choosing between wolf fang and wolf pelt. He stands in the dark with a tool in his hand and thinks that he is considered an idiot, because without it, he will not be able to mine ore. Chulsu noticed something unexpected, and a man with black hair is watching him with a predatory smile. Chulsu fights back several blows with effort, expressing pain and tension. Chulsu asks the man with the red beard if he is sure that the information he bought is correct, while the man screams in despair that he has nothing at all. Chulsu raises his hands tensely, thinking he's so used to it that he doesn't even notice. The image shows a powerful blow breaking through a wall with no characters visible. The image shows the moment of destruction of a wall or surface with cracks and fragments without visible characters. Chulsu holds the gun in surprise. Catherine, Ji-hyun, and another man stand next to him as rocks fall around and a loud sound is heard. Chulsu stands in front of a massive door illuminated by sunlight and a rainbow, expressing surprise. The man in the helmet with horns looks worried and sweating, as if he is expecting or worrying about something important. Catherine smiles, with a predatory gleam in her eyes against a dark background. He is preparing to attack with his eyes bright red and his hand clenched with a sword. Chulsu, with a tense expression, clenches his fist and looks excited or determined. Chulsu screams in pain or rage, his body tense and bright flashes of light erupting around him. Chulsu falls to the ground, gasping for breath and in great pain after taking a hit that dealt him 480 damage. Chulsu stands with a club, and Catherine covers her mouth in embarrassment, watching the frightened man with his back to the viewer. Chulsu grabbed the other man by the hair and spoke to him with a smirk. Chulsu quickly moved forward, showing unexpected speed for him. Chulsu jumps down sharply, leaving behind a dark shadow in the shape of a dragon. Chulsu is breathing heavily and looks scared, as if he's just been through a lot of stress. He clutches a green crystal in his hand, which begins to crumble into small pieces. Chulsu screams in rage, demanding his money back. In front of the open ancient gates, a dark space surrounded by stone walls and shimmering particles can be seen in the rays of light. Chulsu, lying on the ground, resolutely declares that he will not leave after losing the healing crystal and is going to crash the party and change his life. Someone suddenly demands to stop, loudly saying, "Wait right there." Chulsu suddenly jumps down into the hidden dungeon, expressing surprise at finding hidden dungeon. Chulsu stretches upward, trying to reach something in the dark space. Chulsu falls down the stairs and gets mad at them. Chulsu falls from a great height, taking 80 damage. Chulsu stands with his arms outstretched, looking ahead tensely, as if preparing for something important. The image shows a hidden dungeon with the inscription Goblin Shrine and a statue of a goblin sitting on a throne in a gloomy atmosphere. Chulsu stands at a large stone throne, lit from above, in an empty hall with a marble floor. He is surprised and wonders if this is all there is in the low-level hidden dungeon. Chulsu runs in panic towards a fallen man with a beard and glasses lying in a pool of black liquid. The image shows a man wearing a helmet with horns asking to use the revival skill. Chulsu speaks thoughtfully about a hidden dungeon and mentions that something flew into the village. He looks with alarm at the warning about the high difficulty of the dungeon, which is much higher than his level, and he is advised to leave the place immediately. He lifts another man up with one arm, showing strength and dominance in a tense situation. Catherine tries to protect herself by hiding under a huge hand that is trying to grab her. Chulsu looks in horror at the huge creature with a long neck and asks what kind of monster it is. An unknown man is grabbed by a huge creature with a mouth ready to swallow him. The image shows a hand being squeezed and torn apart, accompanied by sounds of pain and blood, but the characters are not visible or speaking. Chulsu, covering his face with his hand, realizes that the worst-case scenario is happening. The image shows virtual glasses on a red background with a pattern. There are no characters. Catherine screams for help as she finds herself trapped between large hands. The image shows a brain surrounded by flashes of electricity and light, creating the effect of powerful energy or activation. Chulsu, scared and sweating, tries to run away from the sinister creature, determined not to let it win. Chulsu refuses to take the blame, saying it wasn't his fault. Chulsu, with a predatory smile and wide-open mouth, expresses mad excitement or gloating. In front of the throne in the gloomy hall stands a huge creature with a bulging belly. And below, you can see the shadow of a man watching him. Chulsu stands with his back to the ground, clenching his fists, preparing for action in a dark place. Catherine lies on the floor, breathing heavily, clearly in pain or fatigue. Chulsu carried the heavy bag tensely, sweating and looking anxious. Chulsu slams his pickaxe into the ground, saying he wanted to fight monsters. Chulsu, sobbing and clutching his chest, asks if he should be offended by what was said. Chulsu shouts in defiance at someone sitting on the throne, calling him a goblin. The image shows a close-up of the creature's head with its mouth open, as if it were making a loud laugh or scream, illuminated by light from above. A message appears on the screen about being awarded an honorary goblin and offering to change the class to a goblin summoner. Chulsu looks at the glowing holographic screen with tears in his eyes, overcome with strong emotions. A message appears on the screen about the completion of the class change to goblin, with no visible characters. Chulsu stands in shock before a huge creature with long arms, surrounded by an ominous pink light. Chulsu summons a goblin with his summoning skill by saying, "Come out, goblin." The image shows an evil creature with a long nose and sharp teeth, standing on a glowing circle with mystical symbols. Chulsu decides to use another person as bait to take advantage of the moment and escape. Chulsu points confidently forward as a green creature with a long tongue and club prepares to attack. The image shows a creature with a long neck and a mouth full of sharp teeth, surrounded by a red light and moving in an aggressive pose. The image shows a creature with a huge mouth filled with sharp teeth in a tense pose against a wooden wall. The image shows a green-skinned creature attacking a huge enemy, which makes a sound that suggests surprise or confusion. Chulsu is surprised when his hand breaks through the wall and he quietly expresses confusion. A message appears on the screen about a multiple increase in experience, after which someone exclaims in surprise. The image shows a green-skinned creature standing in a fighting pose in front of a large building. The image shows a green goblin with his tongue hanging out, while someone off-screen calls him weak in amazement. Chulsu looks tense and worried, sweating and looking ahead in the gloomy surroundings. Chulsu is surprised that someone actually reached max level. An unknown man is grabbed by a huge creature with sharp teeth and long fingers, preparing to swallow him. The image shows a hand squeezing another, causing massive bleeding and destruction, surrounded by an ominous red light. Catherine screams in horror, trapped in wooden stocks, her eyes full of fear and tears. The image shows a loud sound or scream, expressed in large, distorted letters against a bright background. Catherine screams into her VR headset, expressing intense panic and fear. Chulsu hurriedly approached Catherine, who was lying on the table, with her eyes closed and her fists clenched. Chulsu holds his weapon tensely, ready for action, with a determined expression on his face. Catherine looks forward in horror and tears, expressing great shock and fear. A small green creature with a club falls into a dark abyss, accompanied by the sounds of falling and screams. The green character deals a powerful blow to the black creature, after which a level-up message appears. The monster attacks furiously, tearing apart the enemy, and a level-up message appears. Chulsu grabbed the monster's low-level mana stone and said the word Goblin. Chulsu happily hugs the many crystals and exclaims that this is better than anything else. The image shows the game statistics of the character ZKIMCHULSOOZ with level 31 and 26 status points. He reflects on the fact that the defenders from his group are dead, and he cannot return alive unless he dies. The image shows a green monster with a club, and the voiceover speculates that he has completed the dungeon and is not leveled up, unlike the narrator. Chulsu stands in a cave next to a green creature and asks if this is a mistake. Chulsu screams in rage or pain, with his mouth wide open and his arms tense. The image shows the facade of the bank building with the sign Nara Bank against the background of daylight. Nara Bank manager smiles as he introduces himself to the camera. He sits in a chair with a cup and says that the drink is cold. Another man sits opposite him at the table. Chulsu happily picks up and hugs the green creature, surprised that it came running to him. The image shows a man wearing a mask with a long nose and sharp teeth, expressing anger or aggression. Chulsu runs, pursued by an evil creature, and thinks that he cannot cancel it, and around passers-by look at what is happening in surprise. A woman with pointy ears smiles with her hand over her mouth as two men nearby laugh in the crowd. A man in a vest loudly denies being a goblin as three people stand behind him watching. The green-skinned creature raises his club, preparing to strike the man standing in front of him. The image shows a green creature with a long nose and sharp teeth saying the word Kiegh. A creature with green skin and 4 ears stands in front of a man, preparing for a fight or a tense moment. Chulsu and the woman with elf ears are surprised as they stand among the crowd that is shouting something loudly. Chulsu internally recognizes that the situation is bad, expressing anxiety and tension. Chulsu screams with an expression of great excitement or anger. Chulsu violently delivers a powerful blow to the opponent standing in front of him. The club-wielding creature delivers a powerful blow, causing an explosion and destruction around it. A PK mode message appears on the screen, and the man with red hair is contorted in pain and bleeding from the mouth. A red-haired man in armor watches a glowing green creature against a crowd in a city alley. Chulsu panics and thinks that if people find out that it is his summoned monster, it will be a disaster. Yoonhyuk points his sword threateningly while Ji-hyun, Suji, and Minsung stand behind him while an unarmed man sits on the ground. He thinks that his goblin will definitely not lose, but killing all the opponents will be a problem. Chulsu, with gloved hands raised, looks fearfully at a hooded man with bandages on his hands, standing with his back to a building and crowd. Chulsu tries to stop the laughing little green creature by making a warning gesture with his hands. Chulsu in a hood confidently repels the attack, demonstrating strength and speed. Chulsu runs in panic, screaming and wondering how things could have turned out this way, while being chased by a green creature and 2 attackers. Chulsu looks warily at the man who suddenly opens the door and shouts at him. A loud slam of a door was heard in a stone building on an empty street. An old man named Sungryul threatens a running man, saying he is taking him to a funeral. Chulsu screams as a holographic message appears in front of him. A message appears on the screen, stating that the Goblin Lord is surprised by the trick and the player has received 1 goblin point. In front of the throne, in the rays of light, stands a strange creature with a large belly, and in front of him, kneeling, is the silhouette of a man. Chulsu looks forward with a determined expression and begins to speak. Chulsu stands with his back to the green creature, who is looking at him with a smile on his face, with his tongue hanging out. Chulsu, with his devilish smile and his sinister mask, simultaneously express mad glee. Ji-hyun runs quickly across the roof, catching up with the jumping Chulsu in front. Ji-hyun moved with a determined expression and asked if he was Yoonhyuk from the darkness. Chulsu screams sharply, expressing strong emotions against the sky. Chulsu, wearing a cloak and bandaged arms, prepares to attack, surrounded by a whirlwind of dust and movement. A hooded man screams as an old man with a beard falls, surrounded by flying wooden debris. Chulsu looks ahead in fear, and behind him a creature with a green eye laughs evilly. Chulsu charges forward with a shout, swinging his sword in a swift attack. The image shows a green creature with a long nose and a protruding tongue, expressing joy or mockery. Chulsu quickly strikes as another hooded man watches with tension and fear. Chulsu reflects that his eyes were not deceiving him then. The image shows a masked man with 2 daggers jumping on another man with his hand raised, holding an object, preparing to attack. Chulsu deflects a powerful blow sent by the green creature, who is sent flying back from the force of the attack. He is surprised to realize that someone has parried his attack. Ji-hyun jumps with his bow, preparing to shoot an arrow with green energy. The image shows a man with blue hair and a hoodie, speaking in agreement with the wind and moving feathers in the background. The image shows a green creature with a long nose and sharp teeth jumping, and at the bottom it says that someone probably used trickery. Chulsu floats in the air in a dark hood with 2 daggers, surrounded by an ominous red glow and smoke. Chulsu, with red glowing eyes, expresses displeasure and announces that his speed has been reduced by 90% and all attacks are now critical. Chulsu is surrounded by dark energy with an MP of 280, while Ji-hyun watches from behind. A man demonstrates a reverse grip stance that increases attack damage by 30% and reduces critical strike chance by 50%. Ji-hyun lowered her head and said something with sadness and fatigue in her voice. Ji-hyun activates the archer skill Gale Arrows, firing glowing green arrows from his bow. Chulsu activates the ability Gale Arrows, which removes all movement speed debuffs in the area of effect. Chulsu activates the assassin's passive skill, increasing attack and movement speed with green energy around him. A hooded figure delivers a powerful blow, surrounded by green energy, while a small creature watches from afar. He tries to stop in panic, not believing what is happening. Ji-hyun backs away in fear as an unknown person crashes into the wall behind her. Ji-hyun turned around abruptly, noticing the approaching shadow, and warned of the impending danger with alarm in her voice. Ji-hyun looks scared and tense, as if she suddenly encountered something unexpected. Chul-soo stands next to a green creature that laughs, and she sits on the ground and looks at them. Ji-hyun looks worried and says something with concern. A drop of sweat runs down her face. Chul-soo says with a grin that he is extremely something, expressing strong emotions. Ji-hyun clenched her fists and showed determination as she prepared for the upcoming challenge. Chul-soo, with a wild expression on his face, exclaims that it is the other person's fault for being so irresistible. Chul-soo explains that they were attacked first, and Ji-hyun angrily retorts that he misunderstood her words. Chul-soo stands next to a green creature with a long nose, looking serious while it laughs with its mouth open. 3 characters stand with their backs to a building, watching something ahead. The image shows 3 men with their eyes closed and mouths open, one of them vigorously pointing his finger upwards, expressing determination or protest. Chul-soo looks up tensely, clenching his fists, while silhouettes of people can be seen in the distance. She is pinned against the wall by a green creature that covers her mouth and looks scared. He admitted that he tried to take revenge on the Evaton Guild, but now he found himself in a difficult situation and could not get out. Chul-soo watches as Ji-hyun fights the goblin, holding it in the air against the wall. Ji-hyun cries as she looks at the scared green creature next to her. Chul-soo cries, tears streaming down his face against a backdrop of blurred buildings. 3 men exclaim, "Whoa!" in shock as they watch something sudden and surprising happen. The crowd raises their hands and shouts to break someone, expressing aggression and unity. Chul-soo prepares to attack with a focused expression as a creature stands behind him menacingly with a club in its hands. Chul-soo suddenly stood up in front of Ji-hyun, who screamed his name in fear. Chul-soo approaches Ji-hyun, who sits fearfully with her arms wrapped around herself, seemingly trying to protect herself. Chul-soo abruptly stops an advancing goblin on the rooftop, while Ji-hyun sits in the distance watching the action. Chul-soo screams with rage, expressing strong emotions. The image shows a goblin with a collar and chain activating the skill Walk the Goblin with a surprised expression. Chul-soo pulls hard on the rope that the green creature is clinging to, and Ji-hyun stands in the distance. Chul-soo jumped up sharply, trying to avoid being grabbed by the green tentacles. Chul-soo quickly fights back the attack, letting out a cry of pain. Chul-soo holds the gold chain tightly and looks away tensely, preparing for action. The green creature screams loudly and the 2 men behind it look scared and tense. Chul-soo explains that his skill allows him to walk a goblin that screams loudly and struggles on a chain. Ji-hyun looks down carefully, holding tightly to the edge of the wooden surface. Chul-soo concentrates on activating the magic power in his hand, preparing to take action on the cobblestone street. The image shows the goblin summoning skill, Goblin Feeding, being activated, accompanied by a light and sound effect. Chul-soo quickly dodges a blow flying towards him on a busy city street. A green creature jumps up in front of the castle, creating a loud noise and dust. Shouts and stomping can be heard at the gates of the fortress, and in the distance a man can be seen making the sounds kirsch. The fortress gate slammed shut with a loud bang, raising a cloud of dust and smoke. Chul-soo stands with his back to the crowd, greeting them against the backdrop of the tower and the setting sun. Chul-soo is relieved that this should temporarily solve the problem. Chul-soo stands with his head down while Ji-hyun stands next to him, his clenched hand visible in the foreground. Ji-hyun touches his ear thoughtfully against the backdrop of city buildings at sunset. Chul-soo stands with his head down, and Ji-hyun, with a bow on his back, talks about the players. Chul-soo threatens to kill in spawn camp, addressing a woman with long, light golden hair. Ji-hyun tries to say something in tears, expressing fear and despair. The gates of a medieval city with flags flying and birds flying by are visible against the backdrop of a sunset, but there are no characters in the image. Chul-soo lies on the bed, relaxed and smiling, expressing her feelings. Catherine remembers that she had no strength then, until a large hand squeezed her. Chul-soo stands up abruptly and says he forgot. Chul-soo looks at a screen labeled Goblin Skills Store with all skills locked. Chul-soo is surprised to read the message that he used the skill Goblin Skill Rally. The image shows the Goblin Skill Rally being used and the goblin making a loud scream. Chul-soo screams in rage at the green creature that is threateningly approaching his face. Chul-soo watches as a green creature with its tongue hanging out jumps off the bed, making sounds of kirg, kirg. Chul-soo anxiously asks if the adventurer is okay, amidst loud knocks on the door. Chulsu screams in panic at a strange green creature with big ears, waving its arms. The room, with a stained glass window through which the moon and stars can be seen, is filled with silence and peace at night. Chulsu lies next to a green mask or creature and looks forward, lost in thought. A man with red hair drinks beer, while 3 others, 1 hooded and 2 faceless, are in the room. Chulsu, hiding under his hood, offered a discreet thanks, reminding him that they were enemies. Ji-hyun looks serious and crosses her arms while a hooded man sits behind her, leaning against the wall. He explains that the goblin is not here now and warns that everyone falls for his tricks. Chulsu looks worried and sweating, as if trying to explain something important. Chulsu looks determined and clenches his fist, preparing for an important conversation or action. Chulsu says something. His hand wrapped in bandages is visible in the foreground. The image shows a young man with black hair, listening attentively to an old man with a beard, who, apparently, is explaining or instructing something. A man apologizes to another man by raising his hands in defense and saying that he is truly sorry. The image shows a level 28 warrior with red hair and a tense expression holding his head, in pain or stress. The image shows 2 men in dark clothing, one sitting and the other standing with arms crossed, and the thought of a possible attack from yesterday is heard. Against the backdrop of the night starry sky and forest, someone's voice is heard beginning a phrase with lie. Chulsu looks at the man from behind in surprise, clearly not expecting his presence or words. A brightly glowing red portal appears in the night forest, surrounded by a vortex of energy. A cloaked Chulsu turns to face a surprised man, preparing for action in a dimly lit room. Chulsu stands with his hood up, his gaze intense, preparing for the upcoming event. Monster with a huge mouth boasts that he earned over $200,000 on drops from a level 80 monster. Chulsu thinks his goblin can easily destroy stronger dungeons, but he is unhappy that he has to spend a month in a city where he can't make money. Chulsu suddenly grabs the stranger by the cloak and yells at him. A hooded Chulsu with a predatory gaze watches the proceedings tensely. Chulsu walks among armed men in hoods, head down, not engaging in conversation. Ji-hyun looks away warily while Chulsu stands behind her with a serious expression. Chulsu stands with his back turned, watching as Ji-hyun quickly walks away, making footstep sounds. A group of people in dark clothes leave the building. 2 of them stand out with light hair and hidden faces. One walks in front with a hood and a sword on his back. The green creature hides behind the box and makes a strange sound, ki-shi-shi. The image shows a large green creature's face with an expression of anger and tension. The image shows a creature with a long nose making a loud noise of surprise or pain. A bright red portal appears in the sky, radiating energy and attracting attention. The older man said in surprise that this was impossible, while the other 2 men discussed launching a raid. He is wearing a hood and looking up with a serious expression on his face under the night sky. Chulsu thinks the boss has raided. A holographic system message appears on the wooden floor about the start of the raid on the boss. Chulsu, with a tense expression on his face, realizes something important or unexpected. Chulsu, Ji-hyun, and Catherine walk towards the glowing red portal in the forest, preparing to enter it. Against the backdrop of a forest, a hooded Chulsu stands next to an old man who says something important, getting his attention. The image shows Chulsu in a hoodie, looking away while saying something serious. One character in a cloak stands in a forest at night, looking at another whose legs are visible in the foreground. Ji-hyun panics and tries to explain that someone is wrong. A hooded Chulsu talks to another man against a night sky and trees. A bright red portal appears in the forest, leading to a raid boss called Reeve. 2 level 26 warriors, a woman with a bow and an old man with a club, stand on a stone pavement, ready to fight. The image shows a warrior named Patton with red hair and an eye patch, holding a large sword and preparing to attack. A group of fighters in the air shout that it will only take them 10 seconds to kill, reacting to a bright red light. Chulsu leads Ji-hyun and Catherine to a glowing red portal, saying it's time to go. Chulsu hides behind a tree in the forest, warily watching the green creature hiding behind it. Chulsu grabbed the other man by the hair with a predatory smile, thinking that anyone could betray him like that time. Chulsu runs quickly towards a bright red light, leaving quick tracks on the ground. Chulsu stands in front of a brightly glowing red portal, preparing for action. Chulsu and a group of allies run towards an attacking level 40 iron giant, preparing for battle. Chulsu and the hooded stranger run at full speed, expressing tension and determination. Ji-hyun screams tensely, expressing strong emotions and anxiety. Chulsu screams with desperation and tension, expressing strong emotions against a red, intense background. A terrifying creature with a huge mouth and sharp teeth suddenly appears in front of them against the backdrop of a purple sky. Chulsu, Ji-hyun, and Catherine prepare for battle, tensing up before the surprise attack. The man shouts as he picks out the goblin, his fists clenched in determination. Chulsu stands in a fighting stance, preparing to attack a huge mechanical monster with red eyes that is rushing towards him. Chulsu screams furiously, demanding to come outside. Chulsu lies dead on the floor after taking damage while another man with red hair watches him. Chulsu, with a hood over his head and a bandaged hand, stands in a dark room as someone announces that the place is closed. An elderly man with a beard speaks tensely about the place they are in. Three heroes stand before a gigantic level 40 iron giant, realizing they are facing the raid's hidden boss. Chulsu screams in pain as something hits him in the face. He is surprised that he was killed in one hit, even though he is above level 30, and admits that he knows about level 40, but is still shocked. The image shows the game statistics of the character ZKIMCHULSOOZ, a goblin summoner with level 31 and attribute and status points distributed. The armored warrior regrets that the treasure was right before his eyes, blaming the useless goblin for his failure. A hooded Chulsu screams with fury, his eyes glowing red against the fiery light. Ji-hyun suddenly strikes, attacking the opponent with concentration. The image shows the use of the archer's skill Descending Wind Arrow, accompanied by a bright light attack. Chulsu charges at an enemy, triggering an effect that doubles the movement speed of all allies. An elderly man with a beard looks thoughtfully at Chulsu lying on the floor and asks who he is muttering to. A huge mechanical monster with red eyes attacks, and two flying fighters rush at it from different sides. The image shows a huge mechanical monster with an open mouth and sharp teeth, making a loud sound, skill. Chulsu quickly attacks two opponents, delivering powerful blows and demonstrating high speed and strength. The image shows a large headline, Serial Slash, in purple and black on a white background. A silhouette of a man with red glowing lines on his body stands in a fighting stance against a background of intertwined white lines. Two men watch a huge armored warrior let out a loud roar in a dark hall. Chulsu, in a dark hood with a predatory smile, says something in a dark, foggy room with Gothic architecture. A huge mechanical monster with red eyes and an open mouth appears in the ominous castle, making a threatening sound. Chulsu attacks the giant robot with his sword, slashing at its metal arm. Chulsu delivers a powerful sword strike using the skill Unrivaled Sword, dealing 1,800 damage to the enemy. The image shows a man with blue eyes and a hood preparing to fight, his clenched hand raised forward. The image shows a huge mechanical giant with a level of 40 and almost full health. A man with red hair screams in anger, expressing strong emotions and tension. The image shows an elderly man with a stern expression firmly saying no. Ji-hyun activates the skill Ultimate Deathbringer Arrow, using health to draw the bowstring and increase damage. A man fights using the skill Battle Cry and shouting loudly while surrounded by a bright energy aura. He, surrounded by a glow, prepares for a powerful attack on a huge dark monster with an open mouth against the background of a red sky. The image shows a powerful explosion or impact that destroys a surface with no characters visible. The man fights by delivering a powerful blow with his sword and making the sound "Hmp." The image shows two men with guns preparing to fight in a dark room, one of them surrounded by a glowing halo. Patton strikes, and Seung-gyul, armed with a club, deflects the attack for 848 damage. A description of the pain-sharing skill appears on the screen, which allows you to share the damage you receive with another character, with the one with more health taking more damage. Chulsu thinks to himself that they are low level. Chulsu stands in front with his weapon in hand, surrounded by a group of assassins with different levels and nicknames, ready to fight. Several cloaked figures attack a huge robot with glowing red eyes, striking at its armor. Two people, one with a glowing aura, stand in front of a giant robot, preparing to fight or defend. Ji-hyun draws her bow, surrounded by green light, preparing to release an arrow. Someone is panicking and thinks they might kill the boss. Chulsu stands with his sword in front of a huge evil robot with glowing red eyes, preparing for battle. Man in shock and sweating as he expresses surprise with "ooh" sound in tense situation. The image shows a monster with red eyes and sharp teeth, targeting another player, as the on-screen text states. A hand in a metal glove slams into the ground with force, causing cracks and an explosion of energy. Chulzu, with a predatory smile, clutches the shards in his hand, surrounded by green smoke. Chulsu smiles with a predatory glint in his eyes, showing confidence and hidden threat. Steel Giant used a wide attack, destroying Minsu, Sui, Hyunsu, and Mikesun, as confirmed by the message on the screen. Chulsu stands in a dark room, looking ahead tensely, preparing for the upcoming event. Chulsu delivers a powerful blow that causes the opponent to scream in pain and fly back. The image shows a moment of fast movement where someone delivers a powerful blow to an opponent. Chulsu stands with a sword while two men lie defeated on the broken floor in front of him. Chulsu screams with rage, expressing strong emotions and tension. An elderly man with a staff speaks tensely, sweating and expressing anxiety in a gloomy room. Chulsu uses the warrior skill Giga Slash, dealing a powerful blow to the enemy. A dark figure with red eyes deals a powerful blow of glowing energy to a man with red hair, dealing 3,890 damage. An older man with blood on his beard looks forward, while another man lies on the ground, and the damage number 2,456 appears on the screen with an explanation of the damage distribution mechanics. Chulsu looks scared and tense, beads of sweat running down his face, expressing great excitement. Chulsu, wearing a cloak and holding a weapon, lands abruptly in a fighting stance on the marble floor inside the building. He thinks that monsters always attack healers first. The image shows text that talks about dealing damage from a distance over tanks. A man with a sword shouts, explaining that the monster's taunt skill caused it to attack their tank, Patton the Destroyer. Chulsu explains that reviving the account reset the monster's aggression. Ji-hyun anxiously draws her bow while surrounded by a green magical light. Chulsu exclaims that Ji-hyun, surrounded by a green aura, is using the move Deathbringer. The armored monster roars, and the voiceover says that they haven't had time to fully accumulate the assassin's passive skill. He, hidden in a cloak with a dagger in his hand, decisively declared that he would take on the aggression. Chulsu aims a dagger with concentration, surrounded by green light, in a mysterious place with columns in the background. Chulsu watches in surprise as Ji-hyun draws her bow while surrounded by a green magical light. Ji-hyun screams with rage and fear, expressing strong emotions. He asks why they are looking at him like that. Chulsu looks up with a crazy smile and a predatory glint in his eyes against a dark purple sky. The Iron Giant has targeted Ji-hyun and is heading towards her with a loud roar. He is wearing a hood and runs quickly with a dagger in his hand, preparing to attack. Chulsu uses the skill Twin Blade Rave to deal a powerful blow to the enemy and thinks it is a risky move. The image shows a roaring mechanical warrior with red eyes and dynamic motion. Chulsu jumps from a high balcony and declares that the battle is not over yet. Chulsu leaps into attack, surrounded by a whirlwind of movement. Chulsu uses the skill Twin Blade Rave, dealing a powerful blow and dealing 1,908 damage to the enemy. Chulsu quickly delivers a double strike with two swords, cutting the air around him. The image shows Chulsu wearing a hoodie and rushing forward with a determined expression on his face. Chulsu uses the skill Twin Blade Rave, dealing a powerful blow with purple energy to the enemy. The image shows Chulsu wearing a hoodie and a serious expression as he talks about his three powerful attacks. He stands before the steel giant with two daggers, and the giant chooses him as his target. The red-eyed monster thinks the attack was meant to compensate for the weakness, despite the weak point only having 3 stacks. He is determined that now all that remains is to buy her time. Chulsu looks away with a scared expression, his eyes wide open. The warrior with red eyes furiously attacks the hooded man, letting out a loud scream. A scared man with blue hair lies on the floor in a hood, with another man's legs standing above him. Chulsu screams with rage and tension, beads of sweat running down his face. Ji-hyun screams in shock, asking in surprise if someone is being reborn. Ji-hyun angrily reproaches Chulsu that the others could have killed the enemy if it weren't for her self-revival. The image shows an evil creature with red eyes and sharp teeth, making a loud and frightening sound. Chulsu and Ji-hyun scream at the same time, expressing extreme fear or shock. The Iron Giant has chosen Ji-hyun as his target, and she and Chulsu watch his aggressive attack. Ji-hyun draws his bow and prepares to release an arrow with determination in his eyes. Ji-hyun and Chulsu are standing next to each other, and loud sounds of gunshots or shots can be heard around them. Ji-hyun is terrified as someone with a drawn bow threatens her with an arrow pressed to her throat. Ji-hyun screams in horror, tears streaming down her face and her hands shaking in panic. Chulsu runs quickly, carrying Ji-hyun on his shoulders, who is shocked and tries to pull the bowstring, and he reminds her that she only needs 10 seconds. Catherine charges head-on at the massive knight, delivering a powerful blow that causes an explosion and destruction around her. Ji-hyun turns around in panic, reacting in fear to something approaching her. Chulsu grins as he thinks he spent all his stat points on agility, showing off his in-game stats. He thinks that even though he is not a killer, his speed of movement can be compared to that of a killer. He reflects on the Goblin point he received and is outraged that it only happens for mean actions, accusing the Goblin Lord of injustice. Ji-hyun exclaimed that everything was ready as Chulsu lifted her up in his arms, surrounded by glowing energy lines. Ji-hyun tensely pulls back the bowstring and shouts that the fight is over. Chulsu smirks as he carries a frightened Ji-hyun on his shoulders as she tries to use magic on the enemy. A warrior in heavy armor stands in the center of a circle with magical symbols, surrounded by a vortex of energy. A huge armored monster appears in the hall, causing an explosion and a loud scream. Catherine delivers a powerful blow with a glowing arrow to a giant robot using archer skill, one-shot, one-kill bow. Chulsu carries Ji-hyun on his shoulders, who draws her bow as he yells at her to finish the fight, with a 1% health bar appearing above her. The image shows the Iron Giant using the area of effect skill World Destroyer, causing a massive explosion. The explosive attack destroys the ground, creating a powerful explosion and debris ejection. Chulsu is in pain and is surprised that such an ability was hidden from him. The character notices the attack is spreading across all directions and describes it as all-round. He explains that Ji-hyun is almost out of strength and he himself only has 100 health points left after reviving. Chulsu draws his bow, aiming an arrow at his target, causing debris and sparks of energy to fly around him. Ji-hyun panics as he warns of impending danger, expressing anxiety and tension. Ji-hyun exclaims about his predicament while drawing his bow, while Chulsu smiles as he remembers playing with his friends. A hand with long claws appears from the shadows, surrounded by electrical discharges, against the backdrop of a Gothic interior. In a dark room with cracks and lightning, a huge green head with a long nose and a protruding tongue appears, making the sound 999999. Chulsu screams in panic and tries to fight off the blow that is aimed at him. Ji-hyun delivers a powerful bow strike while surrounded by electrical energy, and the voiceover expresses amazement at what she sees. Inside the hall with ornate columns and windows, stones fly, accompanied by thoughts of an impossible and secret reception. A green creature with 4 arms suddenly bursts through the wall, causing a lot of noise and destruction. The image shows a huge hostile knight in armor with glowing red eyes, emitting a loud and terrifying scream. Catherine draws her bow and prepares to shoot Chulsu, who is standing behind a green creature with its tongue hanging out. Catherine fires a powerful bow shot using the skill one-shot, one-kill bow full charge, hitting the enemy with 22,524 damage. A dark entity comes to life within the destroyed armor, surrounded by black smoke and a glowing aura. Chulsu and Catherine watch from the rocks as the huge mechanism roars into life in the pouring rain. Ji-hyun looks worried and tense, sweating and looking around. Chulsu screams, "No!" in panic and sweats, expressing great anxiety. Chulsu suddenly stretches forward and screams, expressing strong emotions. The hooded man announces that all fallen characters will be revived after the raid is completed. A wounded man in armor screams at 3 hooded figures surrounded by a mystical light in a dark cave. An elderly warrior named Seung-ryul suddenly stops breathing, causing alarm to the observer. He is wearing a hood with his eyes closed and saying something serious against the backdrop of fog. Chulsu screams in rage while clutching his bow, while Ji-hyun and Catherine stand behind him watching the scene. Ji-hyun looks worried and says something with worry in her voice. He screams in panic, expressing strong surprise or fear. He panics and tries to grab something, screaming loudly at the same time. Ji-hyun looks worried and says something with anxiety. A drop of sweat is visible on her face. Ji-hyun watches Chulsu run towards the holographic message about the unfulfilled condition for the hidden class. Chulsu speculates that if the condition is met, they can progress further without defeating the boss. The image shows a green creature with horns delivering a powerful blow, and at the bottom it says that defeating the boss after obtaining the hidden class is the natural order of things. He muses on his curiosity to know what class it is, but thinks it's pointless to think about it now. Chulsu screams in horror as he notices something in front of him with a green creature looking at him angrily. Ji-hyun, holding a bow, screams in panic for her to stop. Chul-soo screams and pulls the rope with force, expressing tension and pain. Chul-soo and Ji-hyun stand in front of a kneeling man and say the name Goblin in surprise. Chul-soo threatens the man with a sword, warning him not to make any sudden movements. Chul-soo stomps on the ground, causing an explosion and destruction around him. Chul-soo notices that Seung-ryul has activated his stealth skill as the old man prepares to strike. Chul-soo screams in horror, beads of sweat running down his face, expressing extreme anxiety and fear. A group of hooded men stand together. One with blue hair and a muscular body looks forward. The others watch him closely. There are materials and a unique bow of the Iron Giant lying on the ground, and someone notices this bow in surprise. Chul-soo screams in horror as he notices something sparkling in his hands. Chul-soo is tensely aware that he has a unique item, the Iron Giant's bow, which is only available to archers and cannot be traded. The text states that unique items cannot be sold or used under certain conditions. Chul-soo vehemently states that he still wants it because everyone else already has it. He, wearing a hood, asks in surprise, "What?" looking at the man standing in front of him. Chul-soo, with a predatory glint in his eyes, grips his weapon tightly and screams, expressing determination and fury. Chul-soo remembers that someone reminds him of that goblin, and in the background, two figures can be seen laughing evilly. A small green creature hides among the rocks and makes a shrill cry, expressing fear or alarm. She grips the strap tightly on her shoulder, preparing for the action ahead. Ji-hyun, armed with the unique Great Iron Giant bow, stands in the cave. Her level and archer status are displayed on the screen. Chul-soo is talking to two hooded men in a dark room, one with a bandaged hand, and they listen intently to him. Chul-soo smiles with a predatory glint in his eyes, expressing confidence and excitement. A group of 4 people, including Chul-soo, confidently advances, preparing for the upcoming clash. Ji-hyun smiles slightly as he looks back in the dark room with the background blurred. Chul-soo stands behind, and a goblin with a club in his hands angrily expresses his displeasure. Chul-soo thinks about the thing he received, a thief's glove, which turned out to be more useful to him. The screen shows a gloved hand with text explaining the rules for stealing items. You can only steal once, you can't steal from characters of a higher level, and you can't steal from users. Chul-soo looks with interest at the piece of high-purity steel he just received in his hand. He said that he used to be a player who only did resource mining and noted that others did not understand the true value of unique weapons. Chul-soo enthusiastically says that a unique weapon is not needed. 3 pieces of crushed steel and 1 piece of high-purity metal are enough for him. In the square in front of the castle in Phoenix El Basar, people in armor and with weapons are walking, preparing for a possible battle. 3 warriors walk down the street of a medieval town. One of them carries a large sword on his back, while the others look around carefully. Chul-soo inhales the scent sharply, causing him to have a strong reaction. Chul-soo furiously says that he was shocked that he died in 1 hit from a monster 9 levels lower. He explains that he has been wearing this armor since level 3, showing the stats of the tattered armor with the required level and defense. Chul-soo turns his back as a small green creature grabs his pants on a crowded street. Chul-soo stands in front of a huge roaring beast, while a small green creature sits on the ground nearby. Chul-soo asks in horror why a boss-level monster appeared in this place, pointing at a small goblin with a club. Catherine sits on a large white animal, smiling against a blue sky with the words Summoner LV-76 written on it. Chul-soo stands in front of a huge, growling beast, on which Catherine sits, watching the events unfold. Chul-soo mentally acknowledges that she is very strong, and he doesn't need to fight her to realize it. Against the blue light there is a silhouette with pointed ears, and in his thoughts he talks about turning on the Everton Guild. Catherine sits on the bed and looks down thoughtfully, as if she's about to say something or is considering an important decision. Chul-soo explains that he is talking about a child next to his interlocutor, while the small creature lets out a piercing cry. Catherine looks forward thoughtfully, as if about to say something important. Chul-soo turned around in fear, holding his weapon, and in front of him stood a small green creature with outstretched arms. The image shows the large white fur and paws of a large creature against a backdrop of city buildings and mountains. Catherine, with long silver hair, looks down from above onto a square where silhouettes can be seen among the people, including one standing next to someone sitting on the ground. Catherine hugs Chul-soo tenderly and begins to speak, addressing him with a soft smile. Chul-soo and the green creature prepare to attack a large white beast making loud noises. A man with a gray beard is shocked and sweating, clearly frightened or surprised by something unexpected. Chulsu yells in irritation at a muscular man with gray hair who stands with his arms crossed and listens to him silently. Chulsu muses that even with max summoning level, it will all end if he, the summoner, dies, so he needs at least a minimum of protection. Chulsu clicks on a virtual button labeled Purchase to make a purchase. A man with a beard and muscles stands behind a counter with armor and shouts the word Buy. Chulsu in armor looks down in surprise, feeling tense and anxious. A man screams that he can't move, and another responds that for people like him, it's better not to move at all because of the heavy armor. He regrets that he invested all his points into agility for the sake of fighting the Iron Giant, and now he is going to get them back. A man with a beard and a muscular body shouts, demanding to sell something, standing in a workshop with weapons on the walls. A bright yellow exclamation mark appears in the room, attracting the attention of those present. Chulsu unexpectedly met a man with a short haircut who is clearly surprised by his appearance. He screams in rage that he can't find the thing he needs. A man with an angry expression holds two sharp tools in his hands, preparing for action. A man with black hair looks in surprise at the loud scream coming from the green creature next to him, while another man works intently. The image shows a man with gray hair and a beard screaming furiously while clutching a hammer. The screen displays the quest, Humphrey's Problem. Find Humphrey's smelting hammer. The reward for completing it will be the ability to create armor from materials. Chulsu studies holographic interface with question of ability to turn materials into armor. Chulsu with a predatory smile says something with confidence and hidden intention. Chulsu stands with a smile and crossed arms next to a green creature who laughs with its tongue hanging out. A man with a beard shouts, "Now," warning that the quest will fail if Humphrey dies. Chulsu wonders if he will die as he stands in front of a muscular man with a hammer and a small green creature next to him. Chulsu runs forward, shouting, "Coming," while someone follows him in the shadows. An old man named Humphrey fights fiercely against mutants and an infected rat, despite the fact that his health is almost exhausted. Chulsu jumps up and shouts, "Goblin," expressing rage and determination. A man fights a wolf as a green creature attacks them from behind, letting out a piercing scream. A green creature with a bag in its hand quickly runs down the corridor, leaving behind traces of mutant slime. A man with a gray beard is screaming, while Chulsu is standing behind him with a tense and angry expression on his face. The man with a stern expression looks worried and tense. Chulsu shouted that the target was there and ran in the indicated direction, holding two hammers in his hands. The character considers leaving the goblin to guard someone while he runs to the boss, but is unsure about calling the goblin back. Chulsu screams, and next to him a green creature with a long nose and a protruding tongue smiles evilly. A man with hammers furiously hits something in a dark room, while several hooded figures stand in front of him. A man with hammers and a green creature attack two beast-like enemies together, dealing a powerful blow. A man with a hammer defends himself from a blow from a green creature that delivers a powerful glowing blow. He attacks many enemies with force, saying that he hasn't given it his all in a long time. Chulsu stands smiling amidst flying parts and blood, showing confidence after the battle. Chulsu stands with his back turned, talking to a man who looks at him over his shoulder against a backdrop of fire and smoke. The image shows the NPC warrior Humphrey using a battle cry that provokes monsters with a battle cry effect. The image shows a skull with a crown against a foggy background, with no visible characters. The image shows a skull wearing a crown with glowing red eyes, emitting a loud scream of "Grah!" He stands facing the Skeleton King and his minions, preparing to fight powerful enemies. Chulsu, with a predatory glint in its eyes and an open mouth, expresses strong emotions, possibly screaming or laughing. Green hand with long claws lifts stone in dark room with brick wall. The image shows a green hand with long claws clenching into a fist against the backdrop of a foggy room with a brick wall. A green creature with a long tongue swings a club furiously, letting out a piercing scream. The sword pierces multiple skeletons, accompanied by sounds and damage numbers. Three men walk down a dark corridor, one of them panicking as he thinks the other is continuing to tease them. Chulsu listens to the wall and laughs quietly, as if he noticed something interesting. The man shouts, warning that it is a trap. The image shows a dramatic sound or explosion, with no visible characters. Three golden spears fly rapidly through the air, creating the effect of bright light and movement. Chulsu screams as he tries to hold back the green creature with its tongue hanging out, which is actively resisting. Chulsu anxiously holds hands with a green creature with a long nose and a protruding tongue in a foggy dungeon. Chulsu stomped on the skull, showing determination and strength in a tense situation. The man with the hammer has an arrow stuck in his chest and his health is almost at 0. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, reports that Humphrey was poisoned. A man runs forward in panic, screaming despite the danger around him. Chulsu shouts the name Humphrey and looks down the street with market stalls where someone is quickly moving away. Chulsu looks away in concentration, his eyes reflected in his glasses against the blue light. Chulsu lands hard in front of a man in a white tank top as he prepares to fight with a crowd in the background. Chulsu holds a small green creature that makes a sound with a smile, and a man with a beard looks at them with surprise and displeasure. Chulsu holds the green creature's head in surprise with its tongue hanging out, expressing shock and confusion. Chulsu and an old man argue heatedly while a small green creature watches with a grin and the names of objects hang in the air. A man blows on a fire in a fireplace, creating smoke and warmth in the room. A fist coated in light strikes high-purity metal, causing bright sparks and a loud clashing sound. A man stands in the middle of a fire with a hammer in his hands, preparing to strike. A man with a beard and a muscular body shouts loudly with his arms crossed over his chest, expressing anger or displeasure. Chulsu looks at his metal arm in surprise and tries to comprehend what is happening. The thoughts say that the item is made from a rare drop, available only in a raid on a hidden boss, which is rarer than hidden dungeons. Chulsu happily shows off his first rare armor, and everyone around him looks at him with surprise and admiration. A description of the rare blue steel light armor appears on the screen, with level and agility requirements, as well as a chance to activate the ability on hit. An elderly man with a beard resolutely declared that he was ready to do anything. Chulsu looks warily into the darkness, where 2 glowing eyes flicker, creating a tense atmosphere. Chulsu delivers a powerful blow to the man, who screams in pain. The man explains with a serious look that he was suddenly attacked. A Chulsu dressed in armor asks a man with a rapier to stop as a crowd gathers. Chulsu says something serious while looking away, holding a sword in his hand. Chulsu screams in pain, covering his head with his hands as the man in black stabs his sword next to him. Chulsu, anxiously holding his head in his hands, asks to wait. Chulsu is shocked when Jihyun lovingly kisses his gloved hand surrounded by hearts. Chulsu stands with an axe, threatening the man who is shaking, while Catherine watches with her hand over her mouth in surprise. Chulsu in armor screams in panic, asking to wait a second. Chulsu looks away silently, his face partially hidden in shadow against the dark background. He realizes that the damage from Geiger's attack must have been significant. He thinks she has become a vegetative patient and refuses to take the blame for it. Chulsu decisively strikes with his rapier, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu delivers a powerful punch to the opponent's chest, causing an explosion and a 0 to appear above them. He thinks tensely about someone, calling him an idiot. Chulsu notices that the blow did not do the expected damage as he watches the scene unfold. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, squeezes the green creature, clearly experiencing malicious glee. The image shows a car, a smartphone, and a microchip against a blue background, accompanied by words about the group and a list of phones, mobiles, and semiconductors. The coins fall into the light, accompanied by the word company, in the spotlight with no visible characters. It sounds like these people are so famous that if you get a job with them, you can consider yourself a winner in life. Catherine, eyes closed, breathes through an oxygen mask, immersed in a state of rest. Chulsu reflects on how she remains in this condition, despite the efforts of many doctors to save her. He holds his head in irritation and says something while standing at the car window. Chulsu adjusts his glasses, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu looks forward with a serious expression and begins to speak. Chulsu squeezes another man's hand and wonders if this is a miracle. Catherine thinks that Chulsu's woman lied to her too. Catherine stands on the street, calmly looking ahead, against the backdrop of buildings in the sky. Chulsu in armor angrily addresses Catherine. A green creature stands next to him. Chulsu touches his chin thoughtfully, while Catherine looks away, expressionless. Catherine walks between 2 knights, and one of them expresses his displeasure with the words, "What utter bullshit." Chulsu says with a predatory smile that at least there is something, making an OK sign with his hand. Chulsu is standing with his armor on and his back turned, and the green creature makes a kaik sound. Chulsu leaned over to Catherine with a smile and touched her chin, speaking to her as she calmly looked back. Chulsu enthusiastically demonstrates how to do something, while Catherine stands nearby watching. Catherine stands on a city street, calmly looking ahead under a clear sky. Chulsu clenches his fist and shouts that he has an idea, while a small green creature with a stick smiles nearby. Chulsu looks up with concern and doubts internally, saying to himself, "Right?" Catherine leads a laughing goblin on a leash while a crowd watches behind her and an armored stranger stands before them. Chulsu screams in panic as he watches Catherine holding a small green creature on a leash as the crowd watches them. Chulsu raised his hand in a defensive gesture, and the woman looked scared while the man watched them with a stern expression. Chulsu in armor with his mouth open expressing strong surprise or fear. Chulsu looks at the old man who refuses and says that something is missing. The image shows an empty courtyard with stone walls and sunlight coming from above with no characters visible. Chulsu stands with arms crossed, talking to a bald man, next to a small green creature with its tongue hanging out. An elderly man with a long beard stands with his head down in a room with stone walls. The image shows a green creature with a long tongue, laughing and holding a rope in its hand. A man in chains leads someone down a narrow alley and tells them to follow him. An old man with a white beard looks at a fist in a black glove that is pounding on the wall, expressing tension and determination. A brightly glowing red portal appears in the forest, surrounded by electrical discharges. The image shows a close-up of a man with a white beard against a backdrop of mountains and villages. The image shows a large castle with towers and a well-kept garden in the foreground, with no visible characters. Chulsu screams furiously at the man with white eyebrows, who looks stunned and scared. A Chulsu in armor and a goblin are standing on the street, and someone with a white tail falls to the ground from behind. On an empty street stands a green creature with a long nose and grins, holding a rope in his hand. Chulsu looks ahead in surprise, as if trying to understand the unexpected situation. Someone says that they can make someone feel much better than those guys. Catherine stands in front of two men who are looking at her in a dark room. Catherine stands quietly as Chulsu and Ji-hyun discuss something tensely in front of her in the dark, tense atmosphere. Chulsu runs with a tense expression and thinks that she has no consciousness, so even the slightest damage can be dangerous. On the holographic screen, a man asks with a serious look, and the interlocutor confirms his consent with heavy breathing. Chulsu in armor shouts a challenge while attacking an invisible enemy with an energy sword. He looks at the screen that says, "Call ended," and starts saying that the conversation is over. Chulsu apologizes to a man in glasses with mountains and greenery in the background. The image depicts a high-level knight with white hair and armor standing against a green natural backdrop. The screen displays the name of the Semyoung Group president, Han Ki-moon. Chulsu stands in front of a man in armor with a cloak, addressing him in the open air. An elderly man with silver hair looks thoughtfully into the distance against the backdrop of mountains and a field. Chulsu runs down the street, being chased by a creature with a club, making a ha sound. Chulsu screams while clenching his armored fist, expressing determination and tension in a combat situation. Chulsu and Ji-hyun clashed heads in a tense showdown, expressing determination and challenge to each other. He screams that he did nothing wrong, but he already has a goblin point. He happily announces that he has unlocked new skills in the Goblin skill shop. The image shows the face of a green creature with a long nose which makes a loud sound, K-E-H? Chulsu clutches the green creature's head in his metal hand, showing determination and strength. Chulsu looks back in surprise, clutching a small green creature in his hand. Chulsu rushes forward, preparing to attack against a clear sky. Green creature with long nose opens mouth wide and sticks out tongue against blue sky with clouds. Against the sky, a green creature with a long tongue and sharp teeth cheerfully waves its hand and points its finger down. Chulsu grins as he makes a victory sign against a blue sky and building. Chulsu jumps sharply into a narrow alley between stone and wooden buildings, letting out a loud cry. Chulsu sticks out his tongue with a predatory smile, expressing aggression and causing tension in the moment. Chulsu and the man with long blonde hair look intently at Catherine, who stands quietly between them. A Chulsu in armor leaned menacingly toward a man standing against a wall, preparing for conflict. Chulsu screams that he is not here, expressing strong indignation. Chulsu yells, "Now die," and delivers a powerful kick to an armored opponent. Chulsu looks forward with a predatory smile and intense gaze, expressing malice or threat. Chulsu and another man lie on the ground after being hit hard, the second screaming in pain and shock. Chulsu screams in rage, clenching his fists in his armor inside the building. A knight in armor with a spear looks around in surprise after hearing loud laughter. Chulsu laughs loudly against the backdrop of the sky and buildings, expressing a cheerful mood. Catherine leads a captive in armor, tied with rope, while a small green creature watches them with a sly smile. A warrior in armor screams furiously and threatens while clutching a spear in a narrow corridor. The character's thoughts state that being arrested by the guards will result in imprisonment, and he cannot afford to waste time. Next to the man in armor stands a green creature, emitting a piercing scream. An old man stands in front of a knight with a spear and bows his head as a sign of respect or request. Two men, one in armor, the other with a beard and bald head, are talking tensely, with the first holding a bag and supporting the second. An armed man in armor grabbed another by the clothes and cursed at him. Chulsu is surprised that they want to arrest him instead of someone else, and Catherine silently watches him. Close-up of closed castle doors with writing expressing despair at not being able to enter. Chulsu, dressed in armor, asked the man in the yellow cloak who he was while standing in the room with the knight behind him. A man with long blonde hair suddenly says the name Shin, and his thoughts express confusion about the quest he received. He smiles thoughtfully, resting his hand on his chin against the backdrop of an old street. Jaehyun, referring to Chulsu, calls the place a lost ruin. Chulsu, dressed in armor, is determined to prove his worth. The screen displays the main quest called Show Your Skills, where you need to bring the golem core from the lost ruins and get a reward of 250 gold. Chulsu smiles with her eyes closed as she stands in a dark, arched hall. Chulsu stands in front of the burning lava and ponders, asking himself if he is sure the name does not mean lost lives. Chulsu thinks that with maximum agility, speed, he can easily pass through the obstacle. Chulsu decides to act with Catherine to protect her from possible harm. Chulsu addresses the goblin while standing next to Ji-hyun and Catherine at the edge of the hot lava in the ruins. Chulsu, leaning on his armored hands, looks forward with an expression of determination and says something important. Chulsu runs towards a huge spinning blade surrounded by fire and sparks. Chulsu sits on the floor, overcome with pain and scared by the explosion or impact near him. The image shows a creature with a long nose and horns jumping through a fire in a room while screaming. A small green creature with a club lets out a shrill scream in front of a man standing in ruins with fire in the background. A green creature with a long tongue holds a rope in an empty hall, preparing for action. The image shows a woman wearing a collar with a rope tied to it against a stone wall with a burning torch in the background. Catherine confidently walks on a tightrope over lava, creating a tense atmosphere around her. Catherine flies swiftly over the molten lava, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu in armor reacts in fear to the loud scream of a strange creature in front of him. An unknown creature attacks, throwing a chain at Catherine as she flies across the room. Chulsu covers its face with its long clawed hands and screams in fear or pain. Catherine falls to the ground, surrounded by dust and debris after a strong impact or explosion. Chulsu screams Catherine's name in alarm, holding his sword at the ready in a tense situation. Catherine looks up with a serious expression on her face, a collar with a rope attached to it hanging around her neck. A man with silver bangs adjusts his tie and holds a knife in his hand while standing in a dimly lit room. Catherine knelt before the white-haired man, asking in surprise if he really thought she was dirt. Catherine cries and prays, expressing despair and strong emotions. Catherine looks away thoughtfully, and her name is heard in the speech. Chulsu asks fearfully what the green goblin said with his mouth wide open and his tongue hanging out. In his mind, he explains that it is just a game and that it is physically impossible to blow into the air despite the sensation of touch. Catherine reflects on the fact that the outcome doesn't matter since she was already dead and decides to at least try. Chulsu gently touches the face of Catherine, who lies unconscious, while he leans towards her in concern. He explains that he is not fulfilling his desires, but doing the right thing. Chulsu from behind addresses someone with a sharp remark through a holographic screen. Chulsu threatens to kill after seeing what he was shown, expressing rage and determination. Chulsu monitors a patient in the hospital and reports that he is okay. The image shows a rare magical dress made of white spiderweb with the characteristics and description of its protection comparable to steel. Someone swipes their fingers across a screen with an image of a man in a tuxedo, causing distortion and sound effects. A man looks at the screen with a serious expression as a message about a disconnected connection appears. Chulsu stands with his back to the ground with two daggers on his shoulder, and next to him is someone in a green hood, in a room with high arches. Chulsu looks into the green creature's eyes with a predatory smile, both displaying mad excitement in the empty hallway. A huge stone ball slams into the floor with force, causing a powerful explosion and flying debris. Chulsu and the green creature plummet downwards, crashing through the floor as a huge rock falls nearby. The image shows a character deftly throwing another in a long corridor with arches and stone walls. Catherine lies unconscious in the hallway, and on a rope opposite her stand small figures, one of which glows. Catherine stands in front of a huge golem, while Chulsu kneels behind her, preparing for battle. The stone creature deals a powerful blow, sending debris and dust flying. He admitted that he got too excited and threw her like a projectile. Catherine sits as Chulsu yells at her in rage for attacking his multifunctional trap disarming device. The image shows a hand in a red sleeve clenching into a fist against a blurred background. The stone creature takes a powerful blow to the chest, flying apart from the force of the blow in the room with the chandelier. The image shows a powerful explosion with sound effects, with no visible characters. A monster with a long nose and a protruding tongue screams and runs against the backdrop of a bright explosion. A giant stone creature clutches a small green creature in its fist, which screams in pain and tries to fight back. A powerful explosion or impact occurs, debris and dust fly, but the characters are not visible. Chulsu, dressed in armor, crosses his arms and smiles, as if confident and ready for action. Chulsu stands before a huge stone golem surrounded by purple energy and lightning. Chulsu is amazed by the appearance of the giant ruined golem, Phase 2, Level 45, and exclaims in amazement. Chulsu looks at the green creature flying out of his mouth in horror and clenches his fist. She climbs onto a huge stone golem with a glowing eye in a dark hall surrounded by smoke and dust. Chulsu delivers a powerful blow to the massive rock creature, causing destruction and a surge of energy. A blast of energy destroys the stone hand, surrounded by purple lightning and light. Chulsu stands in front of a giant Phase 3 ruined golem, preparing to fight a level 50 enemy. The green creature lets out a piercing scream and warns not to destroy anything. Chulsu screams in fear as a green creature clings to a purple object next to him. Chulsu screams and falls through fire and debris, surrounded by an explosion. A huge shadow figure with sharp spikes explodes into flames, creating a powerful explosion and a burst of flames. A dark creature with sharp spikes deals a powerful blow, causing an explosion and a fiery blast around itself. Chulsu screams in horror as a massive explosion occurs near him. He speculates that the creature will continue to be reborn until its core is destroyed. An elderly man with a beard looks at a Chulsu lying on the floor in a gloomy hall with columns and candles. A man in armor retreats in fear from the explosion and debris that suddenly appeared behind him. Catherine stands in a dark room surrounded by smoke and shadows, her gaze focused and serious. He is in armor, screaming with fear and tension, sweating and looking in the direction where something alarming is happening. Catherine stands with a collar and chain, expressing calm and thoughtfulness against the backdrop of a destroyed wall. Catherine stands amidst the dust and debris, watching for a powerful explosion or impact ahead. Catherine looks straight ahead with a neutral expression on her face, not saying a word. Catherine sits before a huge figure immersed in fog and darkness, as if preparing for an important meeting or test. Catherine screams in horror and despair, her eyes wide open and a loud wail escaping her mouth. The image shows a powerful strike with a spiked hand, accompanied by an explosion and a motion effect. Chulsu is terrified, sweating and screaming, while the little green creature next to him laughs, covering his mouth with his hand. The image shows a huge stone monster with glowing red eyes, surrounded by smoke and fire. Against the backdrop of fire and explosions, a huge stone monster with glowing red eyes appears. He puts his hand in his mouth in a panic, trying to suppress a scream, and behind him another person in a hood screams or laughs evilly. Catherine stands with her staff against a backdrop of fire, while Chulsu, in armor, watches ahead, surrounded by smoke and ash. Catherine screams in panic about what happened to her, calling herself a beautiful sorceress against the backdrop of fire and a magic staff. Chulsu is scared inside that she remembers everything he did. Chulsu thinks that despite everything, she is fine, and should thank him instead of yelling. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, is confident that he will receive a huge reward. Chulsu laughs and claps in front of Catherine with the burning and destroyed hall in the background. Catherine moved forward sharply, saying, "Id." The image shows a moment of a powerful impact or rotation in which the headless character flies through the air, surrounded by a vortex of energy. The image shows a powerful explosion with flying debris and plumes of smoke. Chulsu in armor screams in horror against the backdrop of a burning forest. A huge stone statue comes to life and begins to move, causing destruction around it, and in the distance, a small figure can be seen running away from it. Catherine, in tears and despair, tightly clutches the metal object, expressing strong emotions. The hero panics and thinks that he might be killed and repeats that he is very afraid. Catherine in a virtual reality helmet screams in horror or pain. Her voice piercingly sounds in space. A man in a suit and glasses exclaims in surprise as he addresses two doctors in white coats who look worried. Chulsu exclaimed, and someone in his mind asked in horror what he had done to her. Catherine screams on the operating table as two men in white coats try to hold her down, and a third watches on. The image shows a powerful blow from the robot, accompanied by explosions and bright flashes of fire. Catherine runs quickly down the destroyed corridor, and the footsteps of her pursuers can be heard behind her. Catherine looks back in horror as something or someone suddenly appears in front of her. Catherine destroys the wall, attacking the green monster, which lets out a piercing scream. Chulsu stands in armor among the crumbling rocks and screams, trying to understand what is happening. Catherine holds her staff in surprise and tension as she stands on the ruined ground amidst dust and debris. Chulsu, holding a complex weapon, asks the seated Catherine in surprise, not believing that he should be with her. A green goblin with a long nose shouts, "Goblin!" against a broken wall. Catherine sits with a stick, and the creature behind her orders her to be thrown out, calling her a burden. Chulsu looks up in surprise as if something unexpected had caught his attention. Catherine, with tears in her eyes, asks for help in the destroyed building. Catherine screams in despair, tears streaming down her face against a dark backdrop. Catherine clutched her head in despair and screamed, expressing intense pain and suffering. Catherine cries and screams that she doesn't want to get hit anymore, while a green creature laughs behind her. Chulsu looks at the holographic screen with a serious expression against the backdrop of destruction. A goblin with a raised club shouts the word "Goblin." Chulsu forces Catherine to smile by showing a crazy expression next to her. Catherine appears unconscious, and he notices that she doesn't even appear to be lucid. Chulsu adjusts his glasses, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu screams at the holographic screen in panic, expressing great anxiety. A sharp sound is heard in the destroyed room, accompanied by a bright blue burst of energy. Chulsu speaks angrily to Catherine in front of destroyed walls. Catherine cries and says it was a lie, covering her face with her hand. Chulsu and Ji-yoon sit in the shadows, while someone in the distance says he needs a lot of money, with a ruined stone structure in the background. Catherine, with tears in her eyes, screams that something needs to be done as the wall collapses around her. Chulsu called out loudly, "Goblin!" and said with determination that it was time to act. The image shows a level 5 ruined golem letting out a loud "K-I-E-E" cry. The image shows a green creature with a long nose and a protruding tongue, expressing a happy or playful mood. A man with a long nose laughs and insults a small green creature that makes the sound "K-I-E-E." Chulsu and the creature with the rock in its hand run from a huge falling fist, and he warns that it is instant death. The image shows a powerful ice giant surrounded by sparkling energy, preparing to attack. Chulsu noticed that something had stopped moving, expressing surprise in the destroyed hall. Catherine, holding the staff, screams, demanding to know why he's just standing there while the freeze effect description appears on the screen. Catherine screams to run as he and the armored creature behind them try to escape the danger. A blast of bright blue energy explodes across the space, but the characters in the image are not visible. Chulsu, Catherine, and Ji-hyun run along the ruined road, breathing heavily after the intense pursuit. Chulsu points to the door and shouts that something is there. The image shows a tightrope against a backdrop of a broken wall and rocks, with no characters present. The image shows a taut rope snapping suddenly against the backdrop of a destroyed building. Catherine throws her head back sharply and exclaims in surprise. Catherine falls down, ripped from her rope, and the other two run away while someone screams, "Oh no!" in panic. Chulsu, dressed in armor, looks back anxiously in the hall with the large doors. Catherine falls into a deep hole surrounded by a glowing ring, creating the sensation of a rapid fall. Catherine reaches forward in horror, as if trying to stop something above her. Chulsu clenches his teeth and sweats, clearly experiencing great tension or pain. Catherine is crying. Tears are streaming down her face, and a metal collar is visible around her neck. Chulsu peeks out from behind the door, illuminated by the light, his face partially hidden in shadow. A powerful explosion occurs, throwing debris and dust in all directions. The image shows a network of glowing golden lines, forming a complex pattern on the cracks of a stone wall. Ji-hyun charges forward with a scream, destroying the rocks around him and creating a powerful explosion of energy. Ji-hyun lands hard on the ground, slashing his sword at the rocks. Chul-soo, in armor with fear, thinks that the man. Chul-soo smiles and says that everything is his now, holding the object on his shoulder. Someone is surprised and perplexed in his thoughts as to why he is here. Chul-soo regrets not realizing something sooner, expressing inner irritation. She flies forward with a sword in her hands, tearing apart the space around her with golden light and an explosion of stone fragments. An inner voice explains that the moment the player is defeated, an NPC god will appear, as if it were destined. He smiles and says he will take control of the situation. The image shows a red heart breaking through a cracked surface. No one is visible. The text muses that if someone were to recklessly attack something, it would become infinitely stronger. The image shows a level 5 ruined golem with a buff preparing for battle in a room with arches. He reflects on how he was hit by a level 50 creature, but it didn't cause him any real pain. Ji-hyun stares at the sword intently, holding it in front of her, and internally admits that she doesn't like it. A huge stone golem warns to prepare for an attack as a bright yellow silhouette swiftly strikes. He turns around sharply at the loud explosion behind him, expressing surprise and wariness. Chul-soo said, "Huh?" in surprise, noticing something unexpected. A man with long blonde hair says it's a warm-up, and someone is surprised by his confidence. She hits the big stone golem and says that it wasn't that. Chul-soo slammed the ground hard, making an ugh sound and causing a massive explosion. Chul-soo looks with horror at the level 70 NPC, who, despite his wounds, considers the fight worthy of a warm-up. It is suggested that the ruined golem starts at level 40, and the average player will not be able to deal with it. The thoughts say that they will lose to the golem at level 45, and even if they win, the golem will return at level 50 and will definitely win. It sounds like a high-level NPC will show up and easily finish the job. The image shows an unknown creature with a long nose and green skin laughing and shouting, "Kishi-shi-shi-shi!" Chul-soo says the opponent wasn't even worth warming up, standing next to a man in a yellow cloak with a sword. He muses out loud that this NPC is completing a quest and will not die until the golem is destroyed. The image shows something organic with branching tendrils pushing through cracks in the rock surface. Catherine falls down with a loud thud. Ji-hyun flies through the broken wall, surrounded by light and energy. She swings a knife at an object flying at her with a furiously distorted face. Chul-soo slams into the wall, saying it's worth a warm-up, and someone shouts, pointing in the direction. The goblin used the skill Pebble Throw in preparation to attack the enemy. It warns that an NPC is aiming in a certain direction. A huge stone figure falls with force to the ground, causing destruction and raising dust and debris around it. The image shows a clenched fist in a white glove against a red dress and pearl necklace, creating a tense atmosphere. Catherine sits on the ground amidst dust and debris, wondering if they are in danger. Chul-soo and Catherine watch as Ji-hyun walks away without looking back towards the city with the mountains in the background. Chul-soo stands with his hands clasped. Behind him is Catherine and a frightened man in armor, and he makes a conclusion about his assessment of the situation. She thinks she's grateful to him for smoothing over the awkwardness instead of letting the moment pass. He confidently raises 2 fingers and warns not to be in the clouds. He walks down an empty stone street of a medieval town in a yellow cloak. Chul-soo and Catherine approach an NPC in a yellow cloak who makes a strange sound. Chul-soo looks anxiously at Catherine, who looks away and remains silent in the stone-walled room. Chul-soo clenches his fist to express inner tension or anger. Chul-soo stands over an armored opponent, pointing his sword at them, showing determination and dominance. He is in armor, and with an astonished expression on his face, asks who is in front of him. Chul-soo thinks about the unfamiliar equipment and unusual aura, noticing that the enemy is on a different level. Catherine ponders, wondering if he is simply a rich man or an incredibly skilled individual. Catherine is amazed to realize that the king stands before her. Catherine looks down thoughtfully, lost in dark thoughts. The image shows a smiling man with white hair and golden armor, looking forward against a backdrop of sky and mountains. Chul-soo watches silently as Catherine bends down, and he extends his hand to her as if offering help or support. There is a man walking on the street in armor with a blue cloak, and on the left, you can see part of another man in black armor. Chul-soo, with a tense expression on his face, resolutely says that he will save his interlocutor. Someone shouts loudly, demanding to wait a second, but his face is not visible. Catherine and the elderly man suddenly notice something as they stopped in the middle of the street. Chulsu stands in armor with clenched fists, looking up at another armored person, preparing to talk or fight. Chulsu calls Catherine to come, holding her hand while a man in armor watches them. Chulsu screams with rage, expressing strong emotions in a tense situation. Chulsu extends his hand forward on an empty street in a medieval town, as if inviting someone to follow him. Chulsu, dressed in armor, thoughtfully asked about saving the woman. An armed man in a blue cloak reflects on his cowardice and doubts about trying to become a hero as he walks down a deserted street in a medieval town. Chulsu stands in armor on cracked ground next to a talking green bird. A man in armor with horns looks surprised and worried, sweating, and behind him stand two other men in the shadows. The crowd recognizes and exclaims the appearance of the knight Han Kimin, who walks forward in armor with a woman in a red dress. Catherine and an older man with white hair stand together in front of a cheering crowd, watching the action with different expressions on their faces. A man with black hair stands still while another shouts about the Night King Han Kimun and rushes forward. Chulsu fights off the attacking crowd who scream and try to grab him. The idea is voiced that no matter how bad someone's life is, her life cannot be worse. Chulsu notices Sungryul hiding behind a wall and calls him Big Shot. An elderly man said he was hiding in this place. The image shows a serious-looking elderly man with a beard, illuminated by sunlight against a stone wall. Chulsu tensely wrinkles his face and sweats when in a tense situation. Catherine stands confidently next to a knight in armor, demonstrating determination and authority in a tense atmosphere. A man in a blue cloak shouts to the crowd, asking them to wait a second while someone stands still next to him. Chulsu in armor shouts to stop and insults his opponent with a crowd and arena in the background. Catherine looks at the elderly man in armor in front of the crowd, expressing mild surprise. The image shows a man with white hair and armor smiling while talking to someone out of frame. A warrior in armor screams in horror, holding his hand to his chest with a crowd of blurry figures in the background. The crowd shouts that the woman is his girlfriend, expressing surprise and bewilderment. Catherine screams in shock that they have already done something together, expressing strong surprise and bewilderment. Two men discuss a warrior in armor walking away. One of them explains something to the other, pointing with his hand. The image shows a smiling man with white hair and armor saying something while standing against a backdrop of city buildings. A man with silver white hair and heavy armor stands in the hall, surrounded by a crowd, and makes a muffled sound. Chulsu stands with his back to the crowd against a backdrop of ancient buildings illuminated by the sun's rays. Patrick, the elite butler of the Semyoung group, introduces himself loudly, holding his hand on his chest and addressing the crowd. Two people shake hands, making a slapping sound. Catherine is standing and the man is kneeling and holding her hand, expressing submission and saying, "Right." Chulsu listens as one of the knights announces that this is important news and asks for attention. Someone notices with alarm that he is in serious trouble. Chulsu smirks as he addresses an older man in armor who glares at him. The image depicts a man with white hair and golden armor, expressing displeasure or anger. The image shows a powerful kick into the ground, creating an explosion of dust and rocks. A man with silver white hair shouts that there is no need to be influenced by another. Chulsu clasps his head in his hands and expresses intense pain or despair. An elderly man with a white beard clutches his head with his hands, expressing severe pain or stress. Catherine sits on her knees, covering her face with her hands, lost in despair. Catherine clutches her head in panic and screams, tears streaming from her eyes against a dark purple light. Catherine looks on with a serious expression, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu activates PK mode while holding a glowing sword and firmly declares that he will prove his strength. Chulsu furiously attacks an armored opponent while shouting, "To me!" Chulsu rushes towards the explosion, which destroys the floor and walls around him. Chulsu clutches his face with his hands, expressing discomfort, and the word "perfect" is heard behind him. A character in a helmet runs forward at a rapid pace, while someone in his mind screams at him to stay back. Chulsu thinks that if his alliance with another is found out, they will be in great danger, while in the distance there is an explosion, and someone runs away. Goblin attacks Chulsu using the skill Goblin Throwing, and he yells at him to leave him alone. Chulsu stands with his back to the crowd against a backdrop of clear skies and starry skies. Two men are discussing what is happening. One of them asks what is happening, and the other explains that it is about the King of Knights. Catherine sits on her knees on the cracked ground, her head down. Chulsu holds Catherine's hand tightly as she kneels in front of the crowd against a backdrop of historic buildings. Catherine screams and begs to let her go, clutching her head in her hands and crying. Someone angrily asks who he is to do such a thing, adding that he's not going to save him anyway. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, approaches Catherine menacingly, who tries to resist through tears and pain. Chulsu gently lifts Catherine's face as she cries and struggles to contain her emotions. Catherine is horrified, her eyes wide and tears streaming down her face. A wounded man in heavy armor with white hair and a shocked expression sits leaning against a cracked wall. Chulsu, with a predatory smile and wide-open mouth expressing mad excitement or gloating. Chulsu in armor is terrified by the unexpected attack, and Catherine stands in front of him, hiding her face with her silver hair. Catherine laughs sheepishly and admits that she feels awkward. Catherine watches as someone runs away in the distance, leaving behind clouds of dust and attracting the attention of passers-by. Catherine stands with her back turned, and an elderly man in a tuxedo politely addresses her, extending his hand in a greeting gesture. She takes his hand as a sign of support and trust. Catherine walks down a busy street in a medieval town with a man in a suit, surrounded by a crowd of passers-by. Catherine closed her eyes, lost in thought, against the backdrop of blurry city buildings. The image shows text that says the man acts like a gentleman in public, but is an abusive father at home, something Catherine has admitted she always wanted. The internal monologue reveals that Catherine immediately revealed her identity as Han Ki-moon's daughter and spoke about the domestic violence she had experienced since childhood. The text says that after she proved everything on social media, doubts turned into convictions and quickly spread. Catherine in a wheelchair is surrounded by journalists with microphones, and behind the scenes it is said that he suddenly fell ill. Chulsu, with his eyes closed, thinks to himself that this is probably a happy ending. Chulsu yells furiously at the man with the cup, slamming his fist on the table. An elderly man in a tuxedo calmly drinks tea in a cafe without saying a word. Chulsu cries loudly and moans in pain, pressing his hand to his head. An elderly man with a mustache calmly drinks a hot drink, enjoying the moment in a dark room. An elderly man with a white beard drinks a hot drink in a cafe, making a sound when he sips. A knight forcibly removes a man from a building, holding him tightly by the collar. He is surprised to learn that the man belongs to the Semyong group and warns not to call him that. Chulsu experiences pain by squeezing his face with a metal-gloved hand, making sounds of discomfort. He looks at his phone where he sees an image of Chulsu in distress. Chulsu loudly announces the start of the stream and thanks for the subscriptions, while Catherine sets up the equipment in the background. Catherine, in her police uniform, expresses her displeasure, while in her mind, someone wonders at her lack of enthusiasm and wonders why she hasn't done this before. Chulsu blushes and tries to explain in a panic, sweating and with his mouth wide open. Chulsu abruptly refuses and states that he wants money, making a sharp hand gesture. Someone in a tuxedo suddenly said, "Wait," expressing sudden confusion or a request to stop. Chulsu muses she may not be cut out to inherit a major corporation. Catherine smiles and moves forward energetically, as if inviting a game or a fight. She raised her finger with a smile and enthusiastically replied that of course she agreed. She slashed the whip across her chest, showing strength and determination. A description of the rare cursed summoner weapon, the bloodworm skin whip, appears on the screen. He announces the next task with a smile, crossing his arms over his chest. Chulsu aggressively demands that he repeat what he said, and the other man in yellow replies that the Goblin village needs to be destroyed. Small, angry creatures with weapons attack people against the backdrop of a burning settlement, expressing displeasure at those who disturb them. Chulsu grabbed the Goblin's head and asked him if he was doing the right thing. Chulsu thoughtfully said to himself, wondering what had happened. In the forest, the merchant Matadias rides on a cart pulled by a bird and is surprised by the disappearance of his horse. Chulsu, sitting in armor, extends his hand towards the green creature, who cheerfully exclaims, "Kug!" Chulsu screams something with rage while standing against the backdrop of forest and bushes. Chulsu screams in fear, and Catherine whispers something in his ear with a smile. Chulsu gritted his teeth and said irritably that he didn't care. Chulsu in armor screams that he's had enough, and the green goblin laughs an evil laugh. A green creature with pointy ears and claws lets out an ominous laugh as it jumps onto a wooden floor. The armored Chulsu grabbed the small green creature's hand as if trying to stop it. Chulsu in armor screams that he's had enough, and the green character laughs an evil laugh. The image shows a vicious green creature with pointed ears and claws leaping forward in fury, making a piercing sound. An armored Chulsu carefully touches a green creature standing in front of him in a wooden room. On the road, a cart pulled by a large bird suddenly crashes into an obstacle, causing an explosion and frightening the man sitting on it. Two green creatures let out a shrill laugh as they leap out of the shadows into the light forest beyond the arch. Chulsu screams in pain as the green creature attacks him and grabs his face. Chulsu gets hit in the face by a green object that hits him with force. Chulsu fights a green creature that suddenly attacks him, dealing damage and causing him to let out an annoyed cry. Chulsu tensely fights a green creature that lets out a piercing scream. The image shows a green creature with a club jumping and menacingly pointing at another character, who is only partially visible. The green creature grabs Chulsu by the mouth, who screams, "No!" in horror. The man with the gun sharply asks what's going on, and someone is surprised that it's the NPC from the carriage. Chulsu screams that it's a monster as a green hand grabs his face, and he reacts in horror to the attack. A man with a gun notices goblins approaching, one of which shouts about a village. The image shows the moment when someone orders to remain still, but the characters' faces are not visible. The image shows a close-up of a bird with red eyes and a sharp beak as it flies downwards. Chulsu stands with his back to the ground, preparing to fire his gun at two attacking green creatures, one of which is jumping on top of the other. Chulsu fires a powerful shot at the green monster that is advancing on him, dealing 580 damage. The green creature with a long nose sharply fights off the blow, letting out a scream. Chulsu knocks down the green creature, who flies back sharply. Chulsu screams in despair, black tears flowing from his eyes. Chulsu carefully holds the green creature, who clutches his head in his hands in alarm. Chulsu screams in horror, black tears streaming from his eyes. A cart rushes along the road, creating clouds of dust and noise. The green goblin, with horror on his face, tries to hold on as he falls down. Chulsu watches closely as a man in a brown hat and jacket explains something with concentration. A torch burns in front of the entrance to the dark cave, illuminating the stone walls and vegetation around. The image shows an armored leg being lifted off the ground, creating a sound. Chulsu is standing in armor, and a man in brown clothes is sitting on a cart and holding the reins. Chulsu races along a forest road in a cart, creating a vortex of dust and wind around him. The image shows a man in armor looking ahead intently against a blurred landscape. Chulsu holds one of the goblins by the head and says that he is glad that he spared his life, to which the goblin panics and asks if he was really spared just for that. The image shows a close-up of the green creature's face with a terrified expression and beads of sweat on its forehead. Chulsu grabbed the tied-up green creature by the ears, causing him to become frightened and cry. Chulsu leans towards another person with a predatory smile, causing them to sweat in fear. Chulsu touches his armored face thoughtfully, lost in thought. He reflects on the fact that he had no grudge and never saw them do anything evil. It is suggested that he considered goblins evil and believed that killing them was justified. He indifferently thinks that no one will be upset by the death of a goblin. Chulsu stands in armor with a bag in his hand, watching two goblins of different levels staring at him from the darkness. The green-skinned creature screams Mason's name in panic. Chulsu, holding the frightened creature by the head, points forward and shouts, ordering action. The image shows a green creature with a long tongue, holding a black stone in its hand, standing on the ground in a dark environment. The green creature lets out a shrill scream and rushes towards the two small creatures amid an explosion and smoke. Chulsu looms over the startled green creature, preparing to strike. The image shows a close-up of an angry face with sharp teeth and a tense expression, with no characters from the list visible. The image shows several goblins running away in panic from an explosion that occurred behind them. Chulsu stands in armor, watching two goblins, one with his tongue hanging out and the other lying on the ground. He is surprised and says that they call him a goblin, although others are much better than him. Three green creatures stare at each other in a dark dungeon. One of them orders them to stop. Chulsu is surrounded by goblins who insult him and are about to attack him, and he shouts back that he is not a goblin. The image shows several green creatures laughing while a man in gray armor stands nearby, ignoring them. The image shows bright streams of light coming from three windows in a dark wall, creating an atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. The robot's hands reach for a bowl of soup called Goblin Poison Soup, with purple smoke rising from it. The green goblin warns not to interfere in the guest's business, addressing an invisible interlocutor with black hair. Chulsu, holding a spoon with purple liquid, hears the little creatures screaming that they don't want it and demanding that it stop. The image shows a bowl of strange, colorful objects, and at the bottom, someone thinks they're lucky they can't taste anything. Chulsu sits with purple energy spurting out of his mouth, while a green goblin jumps around with his tongue hanging out and an evil grin. Chulsu screams in pain or rage, showing the number 169 above its head. The image shows an evilly laughing green creature with a long nose and ears, hitting the table and laughing loudly. The image shows two goblins laughing, and one of them angrily demands that they stop laughing. Chulsu, in armor, looks away thoughtfully, holding a rag with a stain, and begins to ask a question. The green creature with the long nose says that he doesn't quite understand what the word creature means. He thinks it's obvious to everyone that they are scum, doomed to remain in low-level dungeons forever. Two green creatures with long noses sit on top of each other, the top one laughing loudly and the bottom one looking displeased. Chulsu gives a thumbs up and smiles with confidence. Chulsu stands behind a table, giving a thumbs up, while several goblins around him laugh and threaten, raising their weapons. Chulsu gives a thumbs up next to a goblin who furiously punches the ground to show off his abilities. Chulsu, holding a pickaxe, says in surprise that all this was done for him, while the green goblin with a knife hides under the table. Two green creatures with long noses try to hit a cockroach, one of them exclaims in surprise. A level 8 goblin rushes forward with a weapon in hand, letting out a piercing scream. Chulsu hit the insect hard, calling it a cockroach. Chulsu watches the small spider on the wooden floor carefully, not wanting to touch it. The image shows the legs of a man in armor sitting on a stone block in a darkened room. Chulsu doubtfully remarks that goblins are actually good monsters, while two goblins laugh next to him. Chulsu in armor listens attentively, looking ahead with concentration. Chulsu and the red-haired man engage in a stare battle, the latter raising his sword threateningly, causing tension between them. On the floor lies a bloody green creature with outstretched limbs, with bloodstains scattered around it. Three goblins with wide-open mouths and evil smiles tremble and hug each other, expressing excitement or fear. Chulsu threatens the man with red hair, who looks at him in surprise while trying to hold onto his sword. Chulsu threatens with fury in his eyes, asking who dared to touch his friends. Chulsu yells, "Goblin!" while pointing at three goblins, one of whom is laughing and the other two look wary. The two green creatures react with surprise to the sudden event, one of them exclaiming, "A man with orange hair fights off an attack from a green creature that screams in pain." A man with a sword attacks a green creature, which screams in pain. On the ground lies a wounded green humanoid with long ears and closed eyes. Chulsu scolds the creature for making a mistake in attacking, and it laughs, sticking out its tongue. Chulsu with a sword asks a man with black hair if he knows him. Chulsu punches another man in the head, declaring that he will hold a grudge. Chulsu looks at the hand covering his mouth in fear, in a tense and gloomy atmosphere. There is a powerful explosion with bright fire and flying debris. A man with red hair holds a green doll and looks at a woman in bright leggings, standing with her back to him. The image shows a woman in orange clothing touching her head, but her face is not visible. Chulsu falls to the ground in a cloud of dust, and Ji-hyun exclaims in shock and surprise. The image shows three people standing around a ruined well, one of them holding a sword and looking down, ready for action. The image shows a man with red hair shouting at a woman in an orange jacket who is explaining something while pointing her finger. Chulsu lies on the ground upside down, surrounded by smoke and destruction. The image shows two people talking. He has red hair and armor. She's in an orange jacket and expresses concern or surprise. The image shows a man with orange hair and a tattoo on his arm, holding a glowing sword in his right hand in a dark room. He delivers a powerful blow with his sword to the green creature, which lets out a piercing scream. The image shows a green goblin with a long nose, laughing and pointing his finger forward. The image shows a close-up of a sinister creature with green skin and a wide grin against a red light. The explosion tears through space, creating a cloud of smoke and dust in the surrounding area. Chulsu yells at a woman in an orange sweater who has her back turned and is looking towards the smoke. Chulsu covers his eyes with his metal hand and laughs despite what's going on around him. He screams in panic, sweats, and expresses great anxiety. An unknown man is suddenly grabbed by the head by a green goblin with his tongue hanging out in a dark room. She smashes the ground with a powerful kick, causing an explosion and raising dust and rocks around. A green creature with a club prepares to strike a blue and orange object surrounded by dust and smoke. A man with a gun runs forward rapidly, making a loud cry and the sounds of rapid footsteps. Chulsu uses the skill Explode Smash, attacking the enemy who dodges the explosion. The image shows a step in boots with orange inserts on asphalt, creating a sound. A man with an axe threatens a woman in a fighting stance ready to attack, surrounded by dust and a tense atmosphere. The image shows a green goblin with a club, standing in a fighting stance against a backdrop of an explosion and dust. Chulsu laughs as he sits on the ground, supporting an unconscious man with red hair. A woman in a bright suit angrily yells at a man in armor sitting next to her. Another woman is lying nearby. The image shows a man with red hair and a black headband who speaks seriously about the need to be with someone. A man with a fiery aura raises his spear, preparing to attack, while a green creature watches him. The image shows a green creature making the sound K-I-E-E-K and expressing surprise or fear. Chulsu runs towards a man with a gun while a woman in bright clothing watches the action. The image shows the moment of a fall or impact when a character in armor falls rapidly to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. A knight in armor fell to his knees in front of a goblin who had fallen to the ground and was looking at him with his tongue hanging out. The image shows a close-up of the face of a green creature with a long nose, wide-open mouth, and protruding tongue, expressing laughter or joy. Chulsu, covered in dust and sweating, thinks it's shameful to kneel before a goblin, but is afraid that the goblin will stop listening to him. The image shows a green creature with a long nose making a keek sound and raising its hand in a dark setting. He expressed great irritation, saying that he could not stand it at all. Chulsu and a woman with short black hair react to a wounded man in armor who calls out to his master. She suddenly kicks her opponent, causing them to fall to the ground with dust particles flying around. A message appears on the screen, stating that the Goblin Lord is pleased with the lack of dignity and awards 1 goblin point. A green goblin with his mouth wide open jumps at a man in armor who clasps his hands in front of him. She, in bright sportswear, shouts at Seo Jongmin and warns him not to interfere. A man sits near a broken wall and shouts, "Hey!" expressing desperation or an appeal to someone. He looks up with bruises on his face and mentally exclaims that this can't be. Some people think to themselves that they can't win. She rushes forward with a determined expression on her face, leaving behind 2 figures in the background. Someone suddenly grabs the sword handle with a blue blade, causing a sound effect of impact. She fell to the ground, hitting her hands and knees on the hard surface. Chulsu and Ji-hyun are lying on the ground, surrounded by 3 green creatures ready to attack. The image shows several green creatures with long noses and glowing eyes in a dark setting. Chulsu screams, opening his mouth wide and extending his hand forward in armor against the backdrop of a dark cave. She sits on the ground, tied up, surrounded by aggressive green creatures, looking around carefully. The image shows a majestic castle on a hill under a cloudy sky, with no visible characters. 2 knights in armor with spears ask in surprise, "What?" The image shows a man in armor with a serious expression on his face, standing against the backdrop of a destroyed city. 2 knights in armor stand on a wall and watch a huge hole appear on the ground, surrounded by clouds of smoke and dust. A crowd of green creatures with long noses and sharp teeth runs forward, making angry sounds. Chulsu stands with his arms outstretched in front of a crowd of green creatures, addressing them with a large building in the background. Chulsu, with an open smile and outstretched arms, expresses triumph or delight. 3 goblins scream, ordering everyone to be destroyed. Chulsu stands next to a kneeling Ji-hyun, surrounded by evil creatures in a dark cave. She strikes hard, clenching her gloved fist in preparation for battle. He looks scared in a yellow jacket, and behind him in the darkness you can see ominous silhouettes with glowing eyes. Chulsu carries Ji-hyun on his back through a crowd of enemies, his face filled with rage and determination. A man bursts into the room with a frightened expression, throwing the door wide open and shouting. In the large hall, several people are sitting on benches, and 1 man is standing by the open doors, watching what is happening. In a hall with knight's armor and swords, a man in black and red armor speaks confidently, and a boy in glasses smiles next to him. A man looks in shock at a naked man with a huge round head holding a knife, while silhouettes of other people are visible in the background. Catherine stands in the hall, surrounded by people, and looks worried. 2 men in blue uniforms stand with their arms crossed, one with a book, the other with a pistol on his belt, watching what is happening. She says there is no need to be so cold. A green creature with an axe in its hands bursts through a broken wall, causing destruction around it. Chulsu pointed his gun at the green monster who was approaching him with a grin. 2 people in blue uniforms stand in a room. The man holds a smoking gun with a smile, and the woman crosses her arms over her chest with a serious look. Chulsu starts talking with a smile, addressing someone with his hand on his shoulder. Chulsu stands with his back to the attack as several green creatures burst through the windows. A warrior in fiery armor fights several green creatures, repelling their attacks with bright flames. Chulsu, with a predatory glint in his eyes, attacks with a fire strike, creating a powerful explosion of flames in the room with the bookshelves. In front of the viewer stands the Hellfire Guildmaster with a fiery sword surrounded by flames and lava creatures. Jamini, panicked and with a tense expression, stands in the empty hall, introducing himself as the Vice Guild Master of Hellfire and a level 52 professor. The image shows a blurry close-up of many multicolored shapes under the heading X-ray. Chulsu stands with his back to a crowd of screaming green creatures preparing to fight. Chulsu screams in panic about the invading hordes surrounded by green creatures. 4 people in the vegetation scream in terror as they try to escape the dense undergrowth. 2 men in uniform stand with their backs to a crowd of green creatures preparing to fight in a brightly lit room. The image shows a man with blonde hair who introduces himself as Horace Philiver, the Armstrong Guildmaster and a level 62 marksman. The woman with red hair and glasses is introduced as the Deputy Master of the Armstrong Guild and a level 52 alchemist. Catherine stares intently at the flames that appear on her palm, demonstrating magical power. An ominous laugh can be heard against the backdrop of a rainy city. A huge white cat explodes from the ground with a loud cry, raising dust and stones around it. Chulsu laughs evilly, pointing his finger forward in a look of mad delight. 3 people run down the street, fleeing from green creatures chasing them, who are making piercing screams. She screams for them to come closer while simultaneously striking at the attacking goblin. She, a level 34 mage, stands among fallen level 8 goblins who look at her in horror. There are 3 surprised people on the street. One in a hood is loudly saying something. The other 2 are listening attentively and looking tensely to the side. The green creatures react in confusion and fear to something sudden. One of them utters a frightened "Kick!" 3 characters simultaneously release fireballs using magic, focusing their attacks. As the explosion occurs, several creatures scream and are thrown back by the powerful wave of fire and destruction. A man screams about a higher purpose while firing projectiles that explode in the air. Chulsu in armor screams in terror as explosions and flying creatures appear. A group of goblins scream in panic about the Great Goblin, and someone falls down the stairs, expressing concern for the morale of their comrades. Chulsu screams in despair with his hands raised, begging to show his strength. She thinks with fear that she must give up this game. The Green Goblin laughs loudly and shouts the word "kick" in the hall with columns. On the ground, a green creature tries to grab a large rock, preparing to attack or defend. Chulsu, Jihyun, and Catherine stand together in front of a huge explosion, accompanied by loud sounds and someone laughing loudly. Chulsu casts a spell with concentration, causing a fireball to explode in front of him. The man raised his hands in front of him in surprise, as if trying to stop something or someone. An unknown person attacks 3 people with a powerful blow, causing an explosion and knocking them back. Against the backdrop of a burning city, a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth makes a shrill sound while holding a bag in its hand. 3 people lie on the ground with their mouths and eyes open, covered in blood, as if in a state of terror or death. Chulsu yells that this is punishment for underestimating goblins, and she wonders if it really is a goblin. Several green creatures with long noses and sharp teeth run forward quickly, grabbing something in their hands. There's a wounded man lying on the ground with blood on his face. He is trying to say something, surrounded by green hands. A crowd of green creatures surrounded and attacked one of them, emitting a piercing scream. The image shows 3 green monsters with sharp horns and open mouths from which blood flows, expressing aggression and rage. Chulsu, a little nervously, holds out his hand and begins to speak against the backdrop of trees in a building. A woman with blood on her face is attacked and held by her hair by several green creatures. She lets out a scream of terror. Chulsu falls to his knees with effort, and a woman in a bright suit standing behind him stretches her arms out to the sides. Chulsu slammed into the green creature that was pulling the frightened girl's hair. Chulsu delivers a powerful blow to the green creature with a long nose, causing a loud impact sound. Chulsu, wearing armor with spiked shoulders, looks worried and clenches his hand against a backdrop of medieval buildings. She screams in horror as the green creatures pull at her hair and arms, surrounding and attacking her. Chulsu runs towards the group of green creatures, causing cracks in the ground with his powerful steps. Chulsu with a sword protects a fallen woman from the goblins that surround them. Chulsu jumps with a gun while the girl in pink falls, surrounded by explosions and dark silhouettes. Chulsu looks worried and begins to speak, beads of sweat running down his face against the backdrop of destroyed buildings. Chulsu, sword in hand, is focused, while a man standing behind him warns in shock that something is strange. Chulsu turns sharply to the man in yellow, who said something with a serious expression. He said the word pain with a serious expression while holding the sword in front of him. Chulsu fights the goblins and says that their numbers greatly outnumber their own. She screams in pain as the green creatures attack and deal 103 damage to her. Chulsu grips the hilt of his sword tightly, preparing for action. Chulsu grabbed the man in yellow by the shoulder and shouted, trying to stop him from stabbing him with his sword. Chulsu grabs a blond man by the shoulder and yells at him, trying to stop him or get his attention. Chulsu announces the next task with a smile. Catherine places her metal hand on Ji-hyun's shoulder as she stands with her back to the city. Chulsu screams with rage, expressing strong emotions. She is adamant that this needs to be done. 3 small green creatures try to get out of a dark hole against a background of vertical lines. Chulsu follows a man in a yellow raincoat as he prepares for action in a foggy night environment. Against the backdrop of a red forest, a strange creature with black silhouettes on the branches is shown, which says that they are harmful to the rest of the world. The image shows a dense bush against a red wall with partially visible words in thought clouds. The image shows a tree on a red background, and at the top it says that the balance is not disturbed. He looks at the bowl of strange food and thinks that this was the only strange thing about what was happening. Chulsu in armor asks in surprise if someone has done so much for him after noticing an insect on the table. Chulsu scolds the cockroach and notes that it wasn't the only strange thing that happened. The character's thoughts were filled with surprise that everything around him seemed suspicious. Chulsu grits his teeth and looks very angry or desperate. Chulsu quickly attacks the man in yellow, who warns him that if he wants to understand, he must do something further. She holds her head in her hands in concern as an armored Chulsu leaps at goblin enemies against a backdrop of a medieval village. Chulsu suddenly attacks the woman in orange, who screams in fear. The image shows an unknown character with metal arms smiling widely, stretching his mouth against the backdrop of ruins and a gloomy sky. She lifts a man in black clothing onto her shoulders, preparing to fight the approaching enemies. Chulsu screams loudly, raising a green creature above his head, who declares that he has just spoken. Several blood goblins attack a man lying face down on the ground, stabbing him with large meat bones. The image shows an unknown green monster fatally stabbing a man who lies in a pool of blood on the ground. 2 green monsters with spears scream furiously, and someone wonders in their mind what is wrong with them. There are 3 bloody green creatures with open mouths depicted against the backdrop of the building, and someone is panicking because they can't control them like they used to. Chulsu yells while holding a goblin that all the goblins should stop fighting, and another man tries to get attention while Ji-hyun stands nearby. Chulsu panics and thinks this is the worst possible time for this to happen. Chulsu forcefully throws a green-skinned enemy into the ground, causing cracks to form in the surface. Chulsu, holding the hilt of a sword, says the word suplex, with his eyes closed against the night sky. Chulsu looks at the green creature, who is trying to say something but only makes incomprehensible sounds. The image shows a green creature with an open mouth and raised arms expressing strong emotions against the backdrop of a destroyed city. Chulsu yells something in alarm, trying to get attention in a dark alley. An armored Chulsu screams in rage as a green creature grabs his chest. Someone in a metal glove grabbed the hand of a woman in an orange jacket, causing her to look surprised and wary. Chulsu protects Ji-hyun from the attack of the time goblin, who is sent flying by the blow. Chulsu is holding on to someone in orange clothing with great effort, sweating tensely and looking ahead with concentration. A Chulsu in armor violently attacks a woman in an orange jacket, causing blood to spurt from her mouth. Chulsu dons his armor in preparation for an upcoming event outside at dusk. The image shows a green creature with sharp teeth and big eyes asking, "Keek?" She sits on a large white animal with long silver-white hair, looking at the night sky with falling stars. Catherine looks thoughtfully into the distance against the backdrop of the night sky and an ancient building. Chulsu stands in front of the goblin with his ears down. Ji-hyun lies unconscious next to him. Chulsu is surprised to see the child's uniform and wonders what this child is doing. Catherine looks surprised and worried when someone addresses her, causing her to become slightly nervous. Chulsu holds a cursed sword with a red glow, preparing to attack an approaching green monster. Chulsu shouts that he now understands everything, preparing to stab with a dagger. Chulsu attacks the creature with a red energy sword while Catherine floats in the air as the massive beast watches over them. Silhouettes are visible against the backdrop of a bright explosion, accompanied by a loud sound that conveys the power and destruction of what is happening. Chulsu stands on a fallen enemy with a burning sword in his hands and screams in anger against the backdrop of explosions and smoke. A man in glasses fixes them with concentration as a shootout with green creatures takes place behind him. Chulsu screams with rage, expressing strong emotions against a dark backdrop. A man fires 2 pistols, creating bright flashes of gunfire against a backdrop of a destroyed building. A man fires 2 pistols as blood explodes around him against a backdrop of a crowd and a destroyed building. 2 men in uniform stand with their backs to the smoke and chaos in front of them. A woman with red hair reads intently from a tablet while standing on a stone surface surrounded by ruins. He smiles and gives a thumbs-up sign to show approval or support. The woman with the red tail stopped reading in fear when she noticed a sharp object flying towards her. A sharp cry of "kick" can be heard from behind the bars, creating a tense atmosphere with no visible characters. The green creature is hit in the head, causing blood to spurt out, and falls back with his weapon raised. Chulsu shows off the result with his arms outstretched, while Jihyun watches with a book as blood gushes out from the wounded creature. Several creatures with clubs and axes attack, and 2 people fight, shouting battle cries. Chulsu plunges flaming sword into ground and declares he will show what farming is. A warrior in armor with a sword is surrounded by fire, preparing for a powerful attack. A crowd of goblins screams tensely against a backdrop of fire and destruction. Chulsu holds his leg tightly, trying to free himself as sparks fly around. A group of green creatures surrounded the passage, from which another creature emerged with a stone in its hand, making a loud sound. A terrifying creature with a long nose and sharp teeth appears before them, surrounded by flames and smoke. A man with glasses shouts "leader" at someone, expressing urgency and anxiety. Explosion with powerful energy release devastates ground as buildings collapse. Chulsu jumps into a fiery vortex surrounded by bright rings of flame. A man is shown performing a powerful attack called Meteor Blaster against a fiery explosion. A powerful explosion occurs against the night sky, with flying fragments and bright flashes of fire. A silhouette of a man stands against the backdrop of a huge fire and plumes of smoke, creating an ominous atmosphere. He screams against the backdrop of flames, expressing strong emotions and determination. A man emerges from the fire, surrounded by flames and lava, creating the impression of a powerful appearance. Chulsu, with a sinister smile and a burning background, expresses surprise by saying, "Huh?" A creature with a long beak appears in the fire, making a growling sound. Catherine reaches forward in panic, trying to grab something or stop it. Chulsu focuses on slashing with his sword, which emits a bright red glow. Chulsu attacks the creature with a red sword as Catherine quickly flies up from behind, with a huge beast visible in the distance. The image shows a creature with long ears and a wide smile, with a glowing red whip aimed at it. Chulsu and Jihyun are standing outside when a huge stream of red energy suddenly erupts from the ground. Catherine says in despair that she was laid in a tense situation. Catherine stands with her back turned, watching as the armored Chulsu clenches his fists and screams, expressing strong emotions. Chulsu loses consciousness and the unconscious status appears above him. Catherine releases a powerful red blast that shoots into the sky against the backdrop of the city. The image shows a sinister creature with sharp teeth that makes a sinister laugh. He. Catherine explains that due to the inability to control the minion, the frenzy effect greatly increases their stats. Catherine strikes sharply, expressing determination and tension in the fight. The image shows a close-up of a huge jaw with sharp teeth moving rapidly towards a target. The image shows the moment a booted foot lands on the ground with force and speed, creating a cloud of dust. Chulsu quickly dodges the attack, demonstrating agility and speed in combat. Chulsu notices that the creature does not recognize its owner, and it laughs ominously. He stands facing the beast's huge open mouth, preparing for a dangerous encounter. Chulsu flies in the sky next to a huge white saber-toothed beast, ready to attack. A summoning skill appears that summons a bluebird that flies into the sky. A monster with red skin and sharp teeth rushes forward furiously, letting out a loud cry. Catherine screams that nothing can stop her now. A wolf growls furiously, letting out a loud cry of "Mew" against a dark sky. A huge polar bear lets out a loud roar, "Mew," as it attacks a small man with a red glow. Catherine looks up in surprise and confusion, as if something unexpected has caught her attention. An unknown creature lands abruptly on the ground, causing a cloud of dust and a tense atmosphere. Depicted is a monster with red eyes, from which a beam of light erupts, accompanied by the spoken name, Chell. Catherine deflects the red creature's attack, preparing for the next strike. Catherine concentrates and activates her summoning skill, summoning gigas using electrical energy. Against the backdrop of a mountain with waterfalls, a shadow of a creature is seen jumping on a rock labeled Earth Elemental Gigas. The image shows a vicious creature growling and preparing to attack against the backdrop of a destroyed city. A clenched fist punches the air with force against a backdrop of blurred buildings, creating the sensation of a powerful blow. The image shows a creature with long ears and an open mouth slamming into the ground, causing a powerful explosion. A huge blue bird lifts and tears the earth with force, holding two small figures in its claws. Someone thinks that if he doesn't let the goblin go, many people will get hurt. Catherine, holding the ring, hovers in the air and holds Chulsu in the claws of a huge bird, lifting it above the city. The image shows a close-up of a creature with red skin and a pointed nose, looking up at a glowing object in the sky. The image shows a creature with a distorted face, jumping down against a backdrop of cracked earth and red light. Chulsu slams into the ground, causing an explosion, and rocks to fly around. The image shows a creature with long ears and glowing eyes surrounded by flying rocks against the backdrop of a city square. Two people simultaneously grip stones in their hands, preparing to throw or attack. The image shows an unknown creature with many arms standing in the center of a destroyed land with large rocks falling around it. Catherine holds Chulsu in the claws of a giant blue bird while Ji-hyun follows them in the air. Catherine shouts, raising her hand in determination or appeal against a dark sky. A huge blue bird flies rapidly across the sky, raising stones and dust. Chulsu hurtles through the air, leaving a trail of rocks and light in its wake. The long-eared monster slams into the ground violently, causing an explosion and flying debris. The image shows the moment an unknown creature swings a huge club with a stone in it, preparing to strike. A monster with horns runs quickly towards a glowing object, causing a powerful explosion and destruction around it. Catherine delivers a powerful blow to the huge dragon, while Chulsu and Ji-hyun fall from the heights next to it. In armor, he falls rapidly down against the blurred backdrop of buildings. Catherine looks ahead in surprise, her hair fluttering in the wind and her face filled with worry. A powerful explosion occurs, destroying the ground and sending rocks and dust into the air. On a broken pavement, a creature with long ears and sharp teeth lifts a stone, surrounded by smoke and fire. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, looks out from the shadows against the backdrop of the fire, creating an ominous atmosphere. A creature with pointed ears and an evil gaze appears in the fire, making a growling sound. Against the backdrop of fire and flames, the Flame Knight skill appears, demonstrating power and readiness for battle. Chulsu's silhouette is surrounded by a bright fiery explosion, demonstrating the eternal flame ability. Chulsu watches as the two engage in a fiery battle against the backdrop of a destroyed city. He screams in panic against the backdrop of a burning and destroyed city, expressing great anxiety and concern. A man screams that losing to others is the same as defeat while holding a blazing fire in his hands. A man in glasses thinks with fear that he always did this against the backdrop of a burning city. Chulsu furiously attacks with a flaming sword, blaming someone for always telling him to stay away. The image shows a creature with sharp teeth and red eyes, radiating aggression and rage, surrounded by fire and smoke. Against the backdrop of a burning city, a powerful explosion occurs, accompanied by a strong emission of smoke and dust. The image shows a powerful explosion against the backdrop of a sunset, accompanied by the sounds of gunfire and destruction. Chulsu and Ji-hyun stand among a group of people, carefully observing the events around them. Chulsu and Ji-hyun stand together, watching something ahead, she holding a tablet and he looking up with a serious expression. A boy with glasses stands on the ground and looks up in surprise. The image shows a huge monster with a long nose and an open mouth with drool flowing from it, against the backdrop of a flaming sky and a city. A man with glasses screams in horror, his face expressing intense fear against the backdrop of fiery light. Chulsu grips another person's head tightly, showing control and intensity in the moment. Chulsu holds the boy's head tightly in a show of determination, while the boy looks scared and confused. The image shows a frightened man wearing glasses who is trying to say something, expressing intense fear and surprise. Chulsu aims his gun at a horned creature surrounded by red light with a ruined city in the background. The man adjusts his glasses and looks worried, a bead of sweat running down his face. He adjusted his glasses, looking ahead with concentration, preparing to say something important. The warrior delivers a powerful fire strike to the creature, preparing to finish the attack in one move. With the city burning in the background, Chulsu unleashes a powerful fire strike towards the masked opponent. Chulsu channels his energy with concentration, creating a fiery explosion in front of him against a flaming backdrop. He launches the yo-yo with concentration, preparing for a precise move. Some people are surprised at how badly something is broken that it is impossible to even measure its level. Chulsu activates the Eternal Flame skill, using the Master buff to strengthen his weapon in battle. Against the backdrop of the fire, the creature lets out a piercing cry of K-A-E-E. A clenched fist strikes the ground with force, causing an explosive reaction. A creature with a terrifying face and sharp teeth rushes forward, emitting a loud cry. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, thinks that the proud rival will not give up until he gets his way. The man with glasses warns that you need to surrender if the attack does not bring results. The image shows the moment of an explosion or bright flash of light near a stone object on the ground. Against the backdrop of the burning horizon, there are several metal structures from which smoke rises. Chulsu activates domain expansion while surrounded by green energy and tech effects. The image shows the device stopping the movement of a target within its radius for 8 seconds, showing the effect on the creature in green light. A man with glasses shouts for someone to act immediately. In battle, Chulsu attacks a huge enemy surrounded by fire and energy. Chulsu acknowledges the enemy's strength, surrounded by red flames and focused on the fight. Chulsu survives with 1 HP thanks to a skill that increases his attack when his health is low. Chulsu delivers a powerful blow surrounded by fiery energy, damaging the enemy with 347,540 damage. The image shows a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth, surrounded by fire and smoke, in dynamic movement against a backdrop of destruction. The image shows a demon with a long nose and sharp teeth breathing fire as he flies over a city engulfed in flames. A man tenses as he tries to control the green electrical energy coming from his hands. The image shows an unknown creature with sharp limbs falling and colliding with the ground, causing a bright explosion of green light. Chulsu stands intently against the backdrop of a bright green explosion, watching the action ahead. A message appears on the screen about the ability to move players within the radius of the device with a cooldown of 1 minute. Chulsu screams against a burning landscape where an armored enemy stands. 3 people watch as a man runs across a destroyed area amid fire and smoke. Chulsu warns of impending danger as another man listens anxiously against a darkening sky. Chulsu stands with a sword, and around him several people are engulfed in blue flames and screaming in pain. 2 uniformed men discuss the situation among the reanimated blue ghosts on the ruined battlefield, watching the events with interest and thoughtfulness. He, with his eyes closed and his hair burning with blue flames, calmly says, "Of course," against the backdrop of the fire. Against the backdrop of the fire, he looks away with glasses, glowing symbols flickering around him, expressing the tension of the moment. Chulsu smiles and greets while another man in glasses looks shocked and scared. Chulsu falls from the sky against the backdrop of a burning city, while his interrupted speech about the minutes is heard. A powerful explosion rings out against the burning landscape, sending debris and flames flying. A man with a red sword stands confidently against the backdrop of fire and destruction, preparing for battle. A man in glasses shouts, asking if the enemy wants to continue fighting amid fire and destruction. Chulsu looks in surprise at a flying rock against a backdrop of fire, holding a bloody object in his hand. The image shows a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth, preparing to attack in a dark environment with rocks in the background. A character with blonde hair fires 2 pistols, creating bright flashes and fiery explosions. An unknown man with a sword rushes into battle, accompanied by an explosion and the sounds of gunfire. A man in blue laughs while holding a gun to his head, while another man with a knife stands in front of him against a burning landscape. 2 men stand with their backs to a figure near a castle against a sunset. Chulsu, with a predatory smile, says something with confidence and determination against the backdrop of the evening sky. He calmly said, "Now," against the backdrop of the sunset, holding a gun in his hands. Chulsu and Catherine run quickly towards the castle, where a figure can be seen rushing towards them. The explosion shatters the ground, sending rocks and dust flying in all directions. Chulsu jumps and shoots at a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth that is holding a large oak ball. Ji-hyun, hanging upside down, attracts attention by calling someone over. The image shows a demon with a red glow radiating menace as it growls and prepares to attack in a broken stone environment. The image shows a creature with sharp teeth and a long nose making a loud noise against a backdrop of fire and smoke. Chulsu raises his hand, from which a bright fireball erupts, illuminating the darkness around him. Amidst a fiery explosion, an unknown person delivers a powerful blow from behind, causing 412,808 damage. A boy stands watching a powerful explosion in front of him in a deserted area. Amidst a fiery explosion, he raises his hand with a grin, as if preparing to attack. Chulsu aims his gun with a smile as he prepares to fire. The explosion engulfs the silhouette in bright flames, creating the effect of a powerful and sudden attack. The fiery creature lets out a loud roar amid bright flashes of flame and light. Chulsu screams in horror, his eyes wide and his mouth open in fear. A Chulsu dressed in armor screams in pain or rage while clutching his head against a backdrop of a destroyed building and clouds of dust. Chulsu tries to save a wounded goblin while Catherine watches in surprise. Catherine squeezes Chulsu, who screams in terror, and she says that it looks like he's awake. Catherine begins to speak with a serious expression, expressing regret. Chulsu was surprised to learn that the one in front of him was connected to the royal cat and ordered him to stop. Chulsu stands with his arms crossed, and she, leaning on her knees, breathes heavily after the fight on the destroyed site. Catherine screams against a dark sky and a ruined city. Catherine looks ahead doubtfully, arms crossed as if assessing the situation in a gloomy environment. Chulsu stands in armor, bowing his head before Catherine with silver hair and pointy ears against a ruined landscape. Catherine, with the ruined city in the background, replies that she doesn't know, and someone's voice below expresses surprise. Chulsu screams that there is no button to cancel someone's call. Catherine looks at Chulsu in surprise as he asks her a question. Catherine screams in rage, expressing the strong emotions and tension of the situation. Chulsu screams with rage and glee, clenching his fists against a red light. Chulsu screams in rage as a flaming sword is thrust into his back. Chulsu in armor looks back at the broken stone floor in surprise. Amidst fire and explosions, a creature with horns makes a sound, accompanied by the number 780790. Chulsu in armor with sword in hand, kneeling against fire and destruction, preparing to attack. He screams tensely, sweat appearing on his face, expressing fear and determination in a tense situation. Against the backdrop of fire and explosions, a huge monster appears with its mouth open, making a loud sound. The image shows a character with long limbs striking suddenly or moving at high speed. The image shows a creature with sharp limbs leaping down a rock wall. An old stone tower with a stained glass window is visible against the backdrop of the burning castle, but the characters in the image are missing. A creature with a long nose and horns suddenly appears against the backdrop of a destroyed city, creating an explosive effect. Chulsu uses the skill Eternal Flame, attacking the target at the center of the fire explosion. Chulsu delivers a powerful slash with his sword, causing an explosion that sends the enemy flying into the air. Chulsu exclaims, "What?" in shock against a dark sky. The image shows a character moving quickly in a jump or attack. Details of the face and clothing are not visible. Chulsu reaches for a falling sword against a backdrop of a destroyed space. Chulsu tries to defend himself when a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth suddenly attacks him, grabbing his face. Chulsu stands in armor, surrounded by a green glow, as a powerful explosion occurs behind him. Chulsu stands against a backdrop of fire and destruction as another man approaches him from behind. He strikes his opponent in the stomach against the backdrop of a flaming sky and rocky ground. Chulsu delivers a powerful punch to his opponent against a dark backdrop. A small man tries to stop a tall man in black armor against a backdrop of fire and destruction. Boy with glasses cries and screams, clinging to something, experiencing severe fear or pain. Chulsu looks up with a look of surprise and wariness on his face. Chulsu tries to muffle someone by covering his mouth with a large black hand. Chulsu in armor yells at a remote interlocutor against the backdrop of burning ashes. She says we need to finish things here. Chulsu runs towards the explosion that destroys the ground around him. Chulsu runs forward screaming, surrounded by many green creatures creating dust and chaos around him. A warrior in armor screams in horror as he watches the approaching fiery threat. Chulsu nervously bites his finger and thinks that if he dies, his life will fall into the abyss again. Catherine watches Chulsu standing on the rocks in armor and saying something. A woman with silver white hair and pointed ears speaks with an expression of surprise and determination. Chulsu looks ahead warily, while Catherine, with her eyes closed, says something serious behind him. Catherine looks away and begins to speak, expressing doubt or bewilderment. A dark figure surrounded by bright pulsating streams of energy is depicted against a red background. Chulsu clenches fists in expression of determination against ruined building. She looks forward in surprise, clearly shocked by what she saw or heard. Chulsu screams that something is his lifeline, leaning forward with tension. Chulsu clenches his fists in despair, saying he can't imagine life without his existence. Catherine walks through the park, smiling and tenderly holding a white rabbit in her arms. Catherine looks away in surprise, as if something unexpected had caught her attention. An internal question is voiced about how someone can love something foreign so much that they are ready to cry because of it. Two characters in armor clasp hands against a backdrop of a destroyed building and trees. She, with silver white hair and pointed ears, looks ahead against the backdrop of ruined buildings, expressing mild surprise. Catherine takes the other man's hand and says she is ready to act. Chulsu screams with rage, expressing strong emotions. Catherine, with a serious expression on her face, calls the creature a creature. On the floor stands a viciously growling creature with sharp teeth, around which shadows of people are visible, but their faces are not shown. A dog eats from a bowl under the light of a full moon against a backdrop of trees and garbage bins. Chulsu asked in surprise if it was possible to do this through food. Catherine says that she, text incomplete, looking away against the backdrop of a gloomy landscape. Chulsu recalls distracting the enemy with the goblin's feeding skill, watching it leave. Chulsu touches his chin thoughtfully, a bead of sweat appearing on his face, expressing anxiety or doubt. He realized with horror that he had never fed him since then. Shown is the activation of a goblin summoning skill called goblin feeding, accompanied by a light and sound effect. She hopes that this will bring him back to consciousness. Chulsu, wearing armor, looks up in surprise, clutching a small red ball in his metal hand. Chulsu runs through dust and debris, screaming for someone to hold on. Catherine yells for someone to wait, holding her hand out in front of trees and a building. Catherine quickly runs after the green creature, trying to catch up with it. Catherine reacts with surprise to the unexpected event, expressing this with a silent question. Catherine confidently moves forward, while green creatures try to stop her, raising dust and creating chaos around her. Chulsu in armor runs with a tense expression while being chased by a green creature in a dark setting. Chulsu looks ahead tensely, sweating and clutching his sword, preparing for danger. The image shows a close-up of a green creature with a long tongue and a furious expression against a backdrop of destruction. Chulsu looks in horror at the metal hand that suddenly appeared in front of him. A hand in a metal glove cuts flesh from claws, displaying a dangerous weapon in a tense situation. An armored Chulsu runs screaming, pursued by a group of green creatures. Chulsu in armor runs forward, screaming, as an army of green creatures and explosions advance. Chulsu anxiously says the word "the" against a backdrop of dark skies and fire. The image shows a smiling man with blue glowing elements around his head, raising his hand, creating a sense of magic or a digital effect. Chulsu runs forward at full speed, chasing a figure against a backdrop of a ruined landscape and a blue glowing creature. The man was suddenly grabbed by the gloved hand, and he exclaimed in amazement. A child falls from a height, screaming loudly in fear. Chulsu, with his last strength, says, "See you later," and falls to the ground with barely any health left. Chulsu charges into a crowd of green creatures, dealing damage and taking 28 hits. A horde of green creatures with pointy ears and sharp teeth rush forward furiously against a burning landscape. The image shows a creature with long ears and sharp teeth standing in a threatening pose against a background of red fog. Chulsu holds a strange red object in his hand against the backdrop of a destroyed space. The image shows a vicious creature with dripping saliva and a distinctly aggressive expression, ready to attack against a backdrop of a devastated landscape. Chulsu is surprised and wonders if this is the effect of rage as he looks at the creature in front of him. Chulsu in armor with a tense expression, preparing to attack or defend against a gloomy sky. Chulsu hands a small sausage to a creature with a long nose and sharp teeth against a burning landscape. A character with pink skin and sharp teeth greedily takes a sausage in his hand and says that it is good. The image shows a close-up of a mouth with sharp fangs and drool, a scene with no visible characters from the list. The armored Chulsu pushes back the attack of many green creatures in surprise, letting out a scream. A monster bursts out from behind the bushes with its mouth open and its hand raised, ready to attack. A crowd of green creatures advances, making loud noises and stretching out their arms. Chulsu fights a group of green creatures that attack him at the same time. Chulsu desperately fights off multiple attacks, taking damage and misses all around him. The image shows someone angrily calling goblins worthless trash. Chulsu, with a tense expression and clenched jaw, tries to overcome the pressure, surrounded by numbers symbolizing effort or indicators. He acknowledged that Shin was right and noted that there were too many of them. Chulsu screams with fury, releasing all his anger and tension. The image shows a huge mass of green creatures rising like a mountain against the sky. A crowd of green creatures with long noses and sharp teeth violently reach upwards, trying to grab an object. A crowd of green creatures with sharp teeth and long noses greedily reach for an object in the hand of one of them. The explosion shatters the ground, sending huge debris and dust into the air. Chulsu falls down among many dark silhouettes, and the screen displays the text about the rare armor, Blue Steel Light Armor. Chulsu wonders about the armor's function, calling it Heaven and Earth Crusher. Rocks fall rapidly into a deep dark hole, creating a loud falling sound. The green creature delivers a powerful punch to a large rock in the dark space. The moment is depicted when something with great force breaks through the stone, creating an explosion of fragments. The image shows rocks colliding with each other, making impact sounds, with no characters visible. Chulsu falls into a deep, dark pit surrounded by explosive energy. Against the backdrop of a ruined city and smoke, a bright light appears, cutting through the ground, creating the feeling of a powerful event or emergence. An unknown creature with horns throws Chulsu into the air, causing a dust explosion in the arena in front of a crowd of spectators. Chulsu is lying on the ground, and a green creature with a long nose grabs his chest. The image shows a close-up of a creature with green skin and a long tongue, expressing surprise or fear. Chulsu falls to the ground in his armor, making a thumping sound and expressing surprise. Chulsu lies on the ground in his armor, watching a green-haired figure against the sunset. A message appears on the screen about the completion of the task to destroy the Goblin village, with a huge overachievement of the goal and a reward of 350 gold. Catherine lands hard on Chulsu amidst a burning, devastated landscape. Chulsu looks at Catherine, who stands with her hand on her hip and expresses displeasure. Catherine exhales heavily against the backdrop of a burning settlement, expressing fatigue and despair. Chulsu, lying on the ground in armor, refused, looking at the interlocutor with silver hair. Catherine stands with her hands clasped, and he, in armor, looks down against the backdrop of a blazing fire. He holds his sword tensely and looks anxious, as if preparing for an upcoming battle. A man holding a sword looks shocked, while two people standing behind him express fear and surprise. A crowd of people stands on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a sign that reads, "Stimulus check free to take." A man is sitting in a dark room, saying something, and his interlocutor is standing opposite him. The image shows an elderly man with a long beard and mustache in a formal suit, illuminated by contrasting light. He is mentally happy that everything went well, and no one knows that he is to blame. He thinks he made the right choice by listening to Catwoman and punches the sign that says, "Stimulus check free to take." Chulsu thinks he could have it all for himself, but he thinks it's better than constantly running away from angry users. Chulsu sighs heavily and covers his face with his hand, expressing fatigue or stress. Chulsu covers his mouth with his hand, expressing shock and alarm. She reflects on becoming its master, but knows too little about the summoner class. Catherine flies on a big blue bird and thinks to tell more about this Catwoman the next time they meet. Chulsu thinks she is high level and even summoned doves, so she seems like an expert. Catherine said the baby was cute, and he thought she suddenly called him cute. Chulsu stares thoughtfully at the screen, while an older man with a beard watches him closely. Chulsu talks to a bald man behind glass who introduces himself as Seungreul. The man with the mustache folded his hands in concentration and asked if he had been overheard. Chulsu sits at the computer and reacts with surprise to what is happening in front of him. An elderly man with a white beard speaks while looking away, against a wall in an armchair. Two men sit in chairs opposite each other. One asks if the other has become weaker, and the other replies that it is because the goblin has not been fed. He sits with his hands clasped together in a room with parked cars in the background. Chulsu screams in shock, not believing what is happening, and the other man tries to say something, but stumbles. A hand in armor carefully picks up a stone from the ground against a background of grass. A gloved hand clenches into a fist against a background of grass, creating a sense of tension. The image shows a green creature with a long nose making a loud "Keeve" cry against a cloudy sky. He muses that his goblin is unusually strong right now and that the developers may have discovered a critical bug related to the summoner class. A green creature with long limbs jumps on a grassy field against the backdrop of mountains and sky. Chulsu gritted his teeth and thought he had 1 week before the patch went into effect. Chulsu thinks with fury and determination about the need to earn $2 million. A man in yellow with a sword on his belt crosses his arms and smiles, preparing to say something. Chulsu fights a goblin and a quest completion message appears on the screen with a reward of 350 gold. Chulsu shouts with determination, addressing someone off camera. Chulsu stands with his arms crossed against a stone wall, expressing confidence and calm. Chulsu stands with his arms crossed and announces that he needs to reach level 40 to receive the next quest.